The clean-out truck was backed up to Ruth Bell's front porch before her husband had a shirt to be buried in. She sat behind the wheel with the funeral home's clothing form on her lap and watched two men carry Frank's recliner through the doorway sideways. One of them had his arms wrapped around the worn footrest. The other held the back, where Frank's fingers had left a dark patch from years of reaching for the lever. Paige stood in the yard, directing traffic. "Not that truck," she called. "Resale. The donation load is leaving first." For several seconds, Ruth's mind supplied reasonable explanations. Paige was helping with the basement. There had been a leak. The recliner needed cleaning. Then a woman in a gray company sweatshirt came out, carrying Ruth's box of Christmas dishes. Ruth left the car running. Paige saw her halfway up the walk. Surprise passed across her face, followed quickly by the bright, determined smile she used when a client had started crying over a chipped platter. "You're back early." Ruth looked through the open front door. The entry rug was gone. So was the narrow walnut table Frank had refinished during the winter he turned 60. "What did you do?" Paige's smile held. "We got a head start." Inside, every room sounded wrong. Without rugs, curtains, or furniture, the house threw footsteps back at itself. Ruth moved through the living room and saw pale rectangles on the walls where photographs had hung that morning. The brass lamp was missing. Frank's reading glasses were no longer on the windowsill. Even the little dish he used for cough drops had disappeared. 3 cardboard boxes stood against the far wall. Black marker identified them as Ruth, Keep, Ruth, Clothes, and Personal Papers. 43 years had required 3 boxes. Paige followed her inside. "The storage unit is climate controlled. I made sure of that." Ruth opened the box marked Keep. On top lay a framed photograph of Nathan at 23, squinting into the sun on the day he finished trade school. Under it were 2 Afghans, her jewelry box, Frank's high school yearbook, and a plastic bag filled with loose keys. "Where's the rest?" "Some of it's already at storage. The good furniture went to resale. I separated donations so you'll have receipts." Ruth looked at her. Paige wore black leggings, spotless white sneakers, and a headset tucked into one ear. Her dark hair was pulled through the back of a ball cap, embroidered with Clear Path Estate Services. Ruth had recommended Paige's company to 3 women at church. "My dining table is strapped to that truck. It's too big for the apartment." "What apartment?" Paige blinked. "The one over our garage." Ruth stared at her long enough for the headset to chirp. Paige pressed a button without taking her eyes off Ruth. "Give me 10 minutes, Marcy. Where are Frank's clothes?" "They weren't in good enough condition for resale." "I didn't ask that." Helping hands picked up at noon. Most of the clothes went there. I saved his navy suit. Ruth walked past her toward the bedroom. The closet doors stood open. Her side held 6 blouses, 2 pairs of slacks, a winter coat, and the flowered dress Paige believed she wore to every church function. Frank's side was empty except for 4 wire hangers tapping softly against one another. His shoes were gone from the floor. Ruth put one hand on the doorframe. His blue shirt. What blue shirt? The chambray one? Pearl snaps. Frayed left cuff. Paige lowered her voice as if Ruth had become a client. "I'm sure we can find another. He's being buried in that shirt." The headset chirped again. Paige pulled it off. "The suit is in the hall box. He hated that suit. He looked nice in it. He said the collar strangled him. Ruth, he wore it twice. Nathan's wedding and your mother's funeral. He complained both times." A floor scraper screeched in the kitchen. Ruth turned toward the sound. "Why is somebody scraping my kitchen?" "We're taking up the vinyl. Remember the oak under it?" "No, I remember the vinyl over it." Paige rubbed her forehead. "The house needs to be photographed empty. If we can get the floors done this week, we won't lose time." "What time?" "With the sale." Ruth had known Paige for 19 years. She knew the woman's useful faces: sympathy, brisk encouragement, professional concern, the tight smile she used when Nathan told a joke she did not find funny. This face was new. Paige looked frightened, but not of Ruth. She looked frightened of delay. Ruth walked back to the front room and opened the door. Everybody stopped. The 2 men at the truck froze. In the kitchen, the scraping ended. The woman called Marcy stepped into the hall holding a clipboard. Her company sweatshirt had a bleach spot near the pocket, and she looked from Ruth to Paige with dawning alarm. "Mrs. Bell?" she said. Ruth knew her vaguely. Marcy had worked the rummage sale at First Methodist last spring. They had spent half an hour arguing cheerfully over whether an electric carving knife counted as kitchenware or tools. "Hello, Marcy." Marcy's clipboard dropped slightly. "I thought you'd already moved." "So did I, apparently." Paige stepped between them. "We had a communication mix-up. Give us a few minutes." "No," Ruth said. "You're finished for today." "Ruth, the trucks are paid for. Then Paige can send you somewhere else." One of the men still had a hand on Frank's recliner. "Where do you want this, ma'am?" "Right where it was." Paige exhaled through her nose. "It's already tagged. I didn't tag it." There was a moment when Ruth expected Paige to argue. Paige liked momentum. She believed an awkward decision became a bad one, only if people were given enough time to object. But the crew was watching. "Bring the recliner back," Paige said. The men turned without comment. "Everything else stays on the trucks," Ruth said. "Nothing leaves." "The donation truck already has items from another job," Marcy said cautiously. "Some of yours went out on the first load." "How much?" Marcy glanced at Paige. "How much?" Ruth repeated. "Clothing, linens, some kitchen things, books. My recipe tins." "I don't know, ma'am." Ruth nodded once. "Find out." Paige dismissed the crew. They gathered near the trucks, speaking in low voices while Frank's recliner came back through the door. It left 2 dirty wheel marks on the bare floor. One man positioned it in roughly the old spot. Though with the rest of the room empty, it looked like a chair placed for an interrogation. Nathan was in the garage. Ruth found him standing beside Frank's workbench, sorting socket wrenches into shallow plastic trays. He had his father's shoulders and his mother's tendency to press his lips together when he wanted time to think. At 46, he still looked briefly 12 whenever Ruth caught him doing something he knew he should have asked about. "Mom?" He took off his work gloves. On the bench sat rolls of blue painter's tape, a tape measure, and a legal pad covered in dimensions. "You knew," Ruth said. Nathan looked toward the open garage door, where Paige was speaking sharply into her phone. "I knew they were starting. Before we buried him? It wasn't supposed to be everything today. Which things were supposed to be today?" He set the gloves down carefully. "You said you couldn't stay here. I said I didn't know how to stay here. At the hospital, you told me the house was too much. Your father had stopped breathing. I said a lot of things." Nathan's face changed. The muscles around his mouth loosened, but he did not step toward her. "We're trying to make this easier. Did you know she took his clothes? No. Did you know she took the shirt for his burial? No. Did you know my dining table was on its way to a resale warehouse?" He looked down. There it was. Ruth rested her fingertips on Frank's workbench. A crescent of dried glue clung to the edge. Frank had always meant to sand it off. He had meant to repair the downstairs toilet properly, replace the loose porch board, and teach Ruth why there were 6 different kinds of pliers when all of them appeared to do the same thing. Dead people left behind an insulting number of small intentions. "How long have you been measuring?" she asked. "Paige had someone come by last week, while Frank was alive." "Mom, we were preparing." "For what?" Nathan's eyes lifted. "For you to live with us." She almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because she pictured herself crossing Paige's new garage every morning in slippers while nail guns went off below her. "You didn't ask me. We talked about it. You talked near me. You said it sounded sensible. I said I couldn't think." Nathan dragged one hand over his face. His beard had gone gray at the corners. He looked tired enough to be grieving and guilty enough to resent her for noticing. "Dad wanted me to look after you. Your father wanted everyone to look after everyone. That was how he avoided making specific requests." A sound escaped Nathan. Not quite a laugh, but close. Frank had done that. He could turn somebody ought to check the gutters into a task that floated around the room until Ruth caught it. The almost laugh vanished. "What do you want us to do?" Nathan asked. "I want my things put back. We can do that." "No, you can put back what hasn't left. Those aren't the same thing." Paige appeared in the doorway. "Helping Hands is closed. I left a message." Ruth held out her hand. "My key." Paige's face went still. "The spare key," Ruth said. "I can't coordinate any of this without access. You're not coordinating anything else." "Fine." Paige dug into a zippered pocket and removed the brass key with the blue rubber cap. She placed it in Ruth's palm. "But we need to talk when everybody's calmer." "I am calm. That's not what I meant." "I know." Nathan flinched more at that than Paige did. They left after 6. Nathan brought the recliner's side table in from the truck and set a paper sack of sandwiches on it. Paige wrote the storage address on the back of one of her business cards. At the door, she asked whether Ruth wanted her to stay. The offer might have mattered if Paige had made it before emptying the linen closet. No, Ruth said. When they were gone, the house settled around her with unfamiliar noises. The furnace clicked. A truck shifted gears on the county road. Somewhere in the dining room, a loose vent cover hummed because the rug no longer muffled it. Ruth called the funeral home. A woman named Celeste answered. They had met 2 hours earlier across a polished desk, while Celeste explained viewing schedules in a voice gentle enough to make every sentence sound padded. "I need to change the clothing selection," Ruth said. "That's perfectly fine, Mrs. Bell. The shirt I chose is missing." "Oh, it was donated." Another pause. "We can use the suit your family brought in." Ruth looked toward the hall box. He hated that suit. Celeste surprised her by saying, "My husband hates his too." Ruth sat in Frank's recliner. "What happens if I don't find another shirt?" "We'll work it out," Celeste said. "It doesn't have to be formal. No, it doesn't." After the call, Ruth found the navy suit folded beneath a pair of shoes Paige had judged worth keeping. The dry cleaner's plastic crackled as she lifted it. Frank had stuffed a peppermint wrapper into the breast pocket. Ruth held the wrapper between 2 fingers, then began to cry so abruptly she thought at first she was choking. She slept on the bare mattress in the bedroom, wearing her winter coat over her nightgown. Paige had left 6 bottles of water in the refrigerator and removed every glass except a plastic stadium cup, advertising a plumbing supplier Frank despised. At 4 in the morning, Ruth remembered that 40 people were expecting to come to the house after the burial. At 5, she remembered the white roses along the south fence. By 7, she had found pruning shears in the garage and filled a mop bucket with rosemary, cedar, winterberry, and the last roses that had survived the frost. She put the bucket in the passenger seat and drove downtown. Bellwether Flowers stood between a tax office and an empty bakery, its striped awning faded almost gray. Brown paper covered the inside of the front windows. The gold lettering Ruth's aunt had painted by hand was cracked but readable. She knocked 3 times. Nothing moved. Ruth knocked again, harder. A shape crossed behind the brown paper. Locks turned. The door opened 6 inches, and Lena Ortiz peered out with silver hair, loose around her face, and an old red cardigan buttoned wrong. Her gaze moved from Ruth to the bucket of cut branches. "We're closed," Lena said. Ruth tightened her grip on the handle. "I know." Lena's gaze stayed on the mop bucket. "You cut those roses too short." "Good morning to you, too." "The white ones. They need another 6 inches if you want them to do anything but sit in a cereal bowl. I didn't bring a cereal bowl. I can see that." Cold air slipped through the narrow opening. Ruth's fingers ached around the bucket handle, but she would not shift it to the other hand while Lena watched. "Frank died," she said. Lena's face changed so little, another person might have missed it. Ruth saw the quick tightening below her left eye. "I heard." "Who told you?" "People still talk to me even though my door is locked. I need to make something for him." Lena opened the door another inch and looked past Ruth at the empty street. "There are 3 working florists in town. 2. Potter's is mostly balloons now. Then go to the other one. They showed me a book. Florists have books. He hated lilies. Most men do. They smell like a church bathroom." Ruth almost smiled, which annoyed her. "I brought what I want to use. You brought half a hedge. I brought rosemary, cedar, winterberry, and roses. You brought a mop bucket. The flower buckets got donated." That made Lena look at her again. Ruth loosened her grip and flexed her fingers. "Are you going to make me stand here until I drop this?" "I haven't decided. Decide soon." My hand's going numb. Lena pulled the door open. The front room smelled like dust, old wood, and the mineral damp of a building that had been closed too long. Shelving units stood bare against the walls. A display cooler occupied one side of the shop, its glass clouded from within. Brown paper covered the windows, turning the morning light the color of weak tea. Lena locked the door behind Ruth. "Insurance," she said. "For what?" "In case you trip over something and decide grief made me liable. I wouldn't sue you. No, you'd bring soup and tell everybody I was doing my best." Ruth carried the bucket toward the back room. "Where's the table?" "Where it's always been." "That's not an answer after 20 years. 23. Ruth stopped. Lena walked past her, favoring her right knee. "You were going to come back in the spring." "I did come back." "You bought Easter flowers." "Frank's mother was worse. She was always worse when you had somewhere else to be." The workroom appeared smaller than Ruth remembered. The scarred maple table filled the center. Pegboard hooks still held rust-specked shears, rolls of wire, and wooden-handled knives. A faded calendar hung open to March from 4 years earlier. Someone, probably Lena, had drawn an angry face over the first day of spring. Ruth set down the bucket. "You kept everything? I stopped selling flowers. I didn't set fire to the place. How bad is the cooler? Dead? The sink? Moody? The roof?" Lena pointed at a blue plastic tub beneath a brown stain in the ceiling. Expressive. A drop landed in the tub with a hollow plink. Ruth took off her coat and laid it over a chair. "You can't conduct business in here," Lena said. "I'm not conducting business. I'm asking to use your table, to make funeral flowers. 1 set. With no floral preservative, no working cooler, and whatever bugs came in on that cedar." I shook it. "You shook it thoroughly." Lena lifted a rose from the bucket. The outer petals had browned at the edges from the frost. She turned the stem between swollen fingers. "When's the viewing?" "Tomorrow evening. Burial Monday morning." "That rose won't make Monday." "It made this morning." Flowers aren't rewarded for effort. Neither are women, but here we are. Lena's mouth twitched. She put the rose back. Ruth found an old apron hanging behind the door. The fabric was stiff with age and printed with little orange poppies. Her Aunt June had ordered 12 of them in 1988 and complained for a decade that orange poppies did not match anything. Ruth held it up. "You saved this?" "It's an apron, not the Shroud of Turin." Ruth tied it around her waist. Lena lowered herself onto a stool beside the table. "What shape?" "Low. Nothing towering over him." "Casket spray?" "No." "Then what?" Ruth had assumed her hands would know once they touched the stems. Instead, she saw Frank's casket as it had appeared in the funeral home catalog. Polished walnut, pale lining, brass handles. A clean, expensive container that had nothing to do with the man who stored coffee cans of bent nails because someone might need one. "I don't know," she said. Lena waited. "He liked things that looked useful. That's not a shape. He didn't trust anything described as elegant. That's closer." Ruth began sorting the cedar. Some pieces were too woody. Others had flattened in the car. She reached for the shears, squeezed, and felt the blade stick halfway through a stem. "Those were bad when Reagan was president," Lena said. "You could have thrown them out." "I was waiting for you to finish the job." Lena slid a newer pair across the table. Ruth cut cedar into uneven lengths, creating a rough base in a shallow metal tray Lena found under the sink. There was no floral foam that had not turned brittle, so she crossed chicken wire over the opening and secured it with waterproof tape. Her first cluster leaned too far left. Lena said nothing. Ruth adjusted it. Still nothing. "You're breathing very loudly. I have lungs. You have opinions. I have several. Say one." Your line is fighting itself. Ruth stepped back. "It is not. The cedar says woods. The roses say apology. The winterberry says Christmas at a bank. That's 3 opinions. You asked." Ruth removed half the winterberry. For a while, they worked without speaking. Lena stripped leaves that would fall below the waterline, but after several stems, her fingers stiffened. She pressed her thumb into her palm. "Let me," Ruth said. "I can strip a rose." "I didn't say you couldn't." "You reached. You were hurting." Lena dropped the rose on the table. "Still doing it." "Doing what?" "Turning every room into a place where you're needed." Ruth set down the shears. Outside, a delivery truck rattled past. Its engine made the cooler glass tremble. "I came because I need something," Ruth said. "That must be uncomfortable." "It is." Lena looked toward the ceiling. Another drop hit the tub. Ruth picked up the rose and stripped the remaining leaves. "Paige cleared my house yesterday." "Cleared? Furniture, kitchen, clothes." "Frank's things?" "Most of mine." "You moved?" "No." "Then why did she clear it?" "She decided I had." Lena's expression sharpened. "Nathan let her?" "He was measuring the garage." "For what?" "My future." Lena let out a low sound that might have been sympathy if she had been a different woman. "They took Frank's burial shirt," Ruth said. "By accident? They took everything on purpose. The shirt happened to be in it. Where is it? Helping hands, unless it's already somewhere else. And you came here. The house is empty." "That's not what I asked." Ruth pushed a cedar stem deeper into the wire. "I didn't want a picture from a book." Lena watched her for a long moment, then pulled the tray closer. "Your back line is too straight," she said. Together they broke the rigid edge. Lena added rosemary in low sweeps, leaving some branches long enough to fall naturally over the tray. Ruth tucked the damaged roses low, where the brown petals looked less like flaws and more like shadow. They used winterberry sparingly. Ruth's phone vibrated against the table. Paige. She let it stop. It began again. Lena said, "If you're going to ignore it, turn it off." "That noise makes my teeth itch," Ruth answered. "What?" Paige paused. "I found the clothing load." Ruth straightened. "Where?" "At the sorting center. They hadn't processed it yet. They're letting me pull the bags." "Is the shirt there?" "I don't know. There are 14 bags from yesterday." "Then look." "I am looking. I called to tell you that." "All right." Another pause. "Where are you?" "Bellwether." "The clothes florist?" Lena's eyebrows rose. "Yes." "Why?" "I'm making Frank's flowers. I ordered flowers." "You ordered lilies. They're standard." "So are paper napkins. He's not being buried under those either." "Ruth, can we please not turn every decision into a fight?" Ruth looked at the front room, where dust coated the empty shelves. "Who ordered the lilies?" "I did." "Who cleared the house?" Paige's breathing became audible. "I told you I'm trying to fix that. You're trying to recover the shirt. That's one thing. I'm standing in a warehouse going through donated clothes. Yes, I have clients. I canceled 2 appointments. Then you understand inconvenience." Lena turned away, but not before Ruth saw the smile. Paige lowered her voice. "Nathan says you told people the meal after the burial is still at the house." "I haven't told anyone anything. We can't hold it there now. I know. Our place is available." "No." "The church fellowship room then." "No." "Ruth, 40 people cannot eat sandwiches in an empty house." "Probably not." "Then where are they going?" Ruth looked at Lena. Lena shook her head before Ruth spoke. "I'll call you back," Ruth said. She ended the call. "No," Lena repeated. "I didn't ask yet." "You looked. I was thinking." "You think with your face? The front room is big enough?" "The front room has no heat." "It has heat. It has a furnace that makes threats. We could use space heaters. The bathroom sink leaks. 3 ceiling tiles are stained. And the only coffee maker is old enough to vote. Frank repaired that coffee maker twice. Frank repaired everything twice. That was the problem." Ruth untied the apron. "I understand," Lena frowned. "Do you?" "You said no." Ruth moved toward the coat. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act reasonable in a way that makes me feel cruel." "I'm not making you feel anything. You never had to." Ruth put on her coat. At the work table, the arrangement was not finished, but it had begun to look like Frank's yard in late fall. Green holding on, red berries bright against branches, roses open too far to pretend they had not met the cold. Lena came beside her. "You need a shirt," she said. "I'll buy one if Paige doesn't find his. He'll look like he never wore it. He won't complain. That doesn't make it right." Ruth picked up a loose rosemary needle from the table. Its scent clung to her fingertips. "I can hold the meal at the church," she said. "They'll give us 90 minutes between the burial and the afternoon exercise class. Someone will put Frank's name on the dry erase board." Lena stared into the front room. "My aunt used to set funeral food along that wall," Ruth continued. "Remember? Ham biscuits under the greeting cards, coffee beside the carnations. I remember her yelling at people for touching the sympathy arrangements. She said grief made people grabby. She said that about Christmas too." Ruth smiled despite herself. The lock at the front rattled. Paige knocked on the glass, one hand shading her eyes as she peered through a gap in the paper. She held a black trash bag against her hip. "She found something," Ruth said. Lena did not move to unlock the door. Paige knocked again. "You're not reopening this place," Lena said. "I didn't ask you to. You will not invite people in and tell them I'm doing you a kindness. I wouldn't. You'll tell them the truth." Ruth waited. Lena pulled a ring of keys from her cardigan pocket and selected one with a strip of faded green tape. "The truth is," Lena said, heading toward the front, "you asked, and I decided. Those are 2 different things." She unlocked the door. Paige entered carrying the bag. Her hair loosened around her face and a streak of warehouse dust across one cheek. "I didn't find the blue shirt," she said. Behind her, Lena turned the sign in the window from closed to please knock. The bag held 3 of Ruth's sweaters, 2 pairs of Frank's work pants, a tablecloth she had never liked, and somebody else's bathrobe. Paige set each item on the work table, as if unpacking evidence. "I don't know how the robe got in there." Lena pinched the sleeve between 2 fingers. pink chenille, size small, with a cigarette burn near the pocket. Frank's taste changed quickly. It came from the other job on the truck, Paige said. Ruth lifted one of Frank's work pants. A small hardened ridge of plumber's putty clung below the right pocket. She had teased him for years that his clothes could stand up without him. Now she pressed the fabric flat with her palm. Those bags aren't supposed to be mixed, Paige said. I've already spoken to Marcy. Did you find my linens? Some. They're still looking. My yellow recipe tin? No. The blue shirt? I told them what it looks like. Did you tell them about the snaps? Yes. The cuff? Yes, Ruth. Lena leaned against the edge of the table. You might try answering her without sounding irritated that she remembers her own property. Paige looked at her. I've been crawling through donation bags for 2 hours. That sounds unpleasant. It was. Imagine discovering the bags belong to you. Ruth folded the pants. Lena, I'm only imagining. I know what you're doing. Then I'll save my breath. Lena gathered the stranger's bathrobe and carried it toward the front. Paige watched her go. She's going to put that in the window, isn't she? Probably. Who is she? Lena Ortiz. I know her name. Why are we here? Ruth laid one sweater on top of the pants. We work together. At this shop? Yes. You never told me that. You never asked where I worked before Frank's office. Paige seemed offended by the existence of a question she had failed to ask. Nathan said you did flowers for your aunt one summer. Your husband remembers the version that required the least attention. Lena returned without the robe. It's on a mannequin. Adds mystery. Paige closed her eyes briefly. Ruth said, the meal after the burial will be here. Paige opened them. Here? The front room. There's paper over the windows. It comes down. There's dust on everything. Dust comes off. The sidewalk isn't level, the bathroom isn't accessible, and that ceiling has water damage. Lena looked up. You missed the furnace? The furnace is making a grinding noise. It likes you. Paige turned to Ruth. This isn't safe for 40 people. It will be safe before Monday. Who's going to do that? Ruth picked up the pruning shears. Paige glanced around the room. Professional instinct took over, in spite of her. Ruth watched her notice the traffic path, the extension cords, the narrow rear exit, and the unstable shelf by the window. Paige saw buildings as collections of problems that could be assigned. No crew, Ruth said. I didn't offer one. You were about to. We could have this cleaned in an afternoon. No crew. Then let me help. The words landed without the confidence Paige usually attached to an offer. She put both hands in the pockets of her leggings. Lena returned to the arrangement and trimmed a cedar branch. Can she follow instructions? Not historically, Ruth said. Paige's mouth tightened. Ruth met her eyes. You may help. You may not throw out, move, sell, donate, label, pack, or improve anything without asking Lena. What about obvious trash? Especially obvious trash, Lena said. This place is full of it. That was a test. You failed. For the next hour, Paige swept the front room with a push broom, while Ruth and Lena finished Frank's arrangement. Every few minutes, Paige held up an object for approval. A broken acrylic card stand, a stack of sun-faded catalogs, a dead extension cord, a ceramic frog missing one eye. Lena kept the frog. It's ugly, Paige said. It has seniority. Paige placed it carefully on the counter. Beneath the dust, the shop began returning in pieces. The front counter was oak, darker along the edge where years of customers had rested their wrists. A painted border of leaves ran near the ceiling. Ruth had done those leaves one Sunday, while Frank replaced the bathroom sink. At the time, she had been furious that he corrected the way she held a pipe wrench. Looking at the faded border now, she could hear him say, "That's not a wrench, Ruthie. That's a pair of pliers," as if the tool's feelings might be hurt by the mistake. Paige climbed down from a step stool. "You painted that? The leaves? All of them?" Lena painted 6 and got bored. "They looked repetitive," Lena said. "They were a border, exactly." Paige ran a finger over one painted stem. "You were good." Ruth made another cut. "I still am?" Lena's eyes moved toward her, but she said nothing. The front door bell gave a dull clunk. Nathan entered carrying a white department store bag and stopped when he saw Paige with a dustpan. "What's happening?" "Your mother has reopened a condemned florist," Paige said. "It isn't condemned," Lena called. Nathan looked at Ruth. "Have you eaten?" "Yes." "What?" Ruth tried to remember. Lena answered for her. 3 crackers and the inside of 1 rose hip. I was checking whether it had gone soft. Nathan set the department store bag on the work table. I got a shirt. Ruth knew before opening the bag that it would be wrong. Nathan bought clothes the way Frank had, by size, color, and whether the person at the store claimed it was popular. The shirt was blue chambray with white buttons. Its fabric was too smooth, its collar too stiff. The front pocket had decorative stitching Frank would have called foolish. It was the closest one they had, Nathan said. I can go somewhere else. Ruth held it by the shoulders. The sleeves would fit. The funeral home would press it, position Frank's hands over the buttons, and hide everything below his chest. It's fine. Nathan studied her face. It isn't. It will do. Paige said the sorting center might still find his. They might. So we wait. The funeral home needs clothes by 4. I can drive to the outlet in Carterville. It's an hour each way. I know where Carterville is. Nathan. His jaw moved. I'm trying. Ruth folded the new shirt along its store creases. Your father needed you to try yesterday. The shop became very quiet. Nathan looked toward Paige, and for 1 second Ruth saw the familiar transfer begin, the silent request that Paige explain, soften, or absorb what he did not want to hold. Paige remained beside the dustpan. I know, he said. It was the first thing either of them had said that did not come with a defense. Ruth put the folded shirt back into the bag. You can take it to Celeste, she said. Tell her no tie. Dad would want the brown one. Your father would want to sit up and leave. Lena snorted. Nathan's mouth bent. He'd complain about the bill first. He already did. I showed him the price list in September. You showed Dad his own funeral prices? He asked. He was hoping you'd lie. He married the wrong woman. Nathan's laugh broke strangely. He turned his face away and rubbed at his eyes with his sleeve. Paige put down the dustpan, but did not touch him. Ruth noticed that restraint. It cost Paige something to leave sorrow alone. Nathan carried the shirt to the funeral home. Paige stayed. By early afternoon, she had removed the brown paper from the front windows, washed the glass, and created 3 piles in the back room with handwritten signs. Ask Lena, definitely broken, and frogs of uncertain value. Lena stood over the piles with her arms folded. You think you're funny, a little. The second pile is presumptuous. Nothing has left the building. The sign itself is judgmental. I can change it to possibly broken. That's more respectful. Ruth carried the finished arrangement to the front counter. In natural light, the white roses showed every bruise, but the cedar held them firmly. The rosemary gave off its scent whenever someone passed. Paige stopped washing the window. It's beautiful, she said. Ruth adjusted one branch. It looks like his yard. I ordered the lilies because the funeral director asked what color. You could have asked me. You weren't answering your phone. My husband had been dead 6 hours. I thought one less decision would help. Ruth looked at the water running gray from Paige's sponge. You keep saying help when you mean decide. Paige squeezed out the sponge. Sometimes people ask me to decide. I didn't. No? The admission was quiet enough that Lena pretended not to hear it. At 3:30, Paige's phone rang. She checked the screen and answered immediately. Ruth watched her listen. No, Paige said. Check the men's jackets, too. It could be inside another bag. She walked toward the back door, lowering her voice, but the workroom carried sound. What do you mean the first load was transferred? Transferred where? Ruth laid a hand on the edge of the counter. Lena came beside her. The new shirt is blue. It's too blue. It'll be dark in the casket. That isn't the point. No, Lena said. It isn't. Paige returned with her phone at her side. One load went to the regional center this morning. They're checking, but they can't promise anything before Monday. Ruth nodded. I'm sorry, Paige said. It was not enough. Ruth could see that Paige knew it was not enough, which made the words harder to dismiss. Ruth carried the arrangement to her car. Lena wrapped the tray in an old towel so it would not slide, and Paige wedged boxes around it without being told. At the funeral home, Celeste met them at the side entrance. Her gray suit was immaculate, but one of her pearl earrings hung lower than the other. We have missed her. Belle's clothing, she said gently. The new shirt. Yes. No tie. I made a note. Ruth opened the passenger door. This is for the casket. Celeste looked at the cedar, roses, rosemary, and winterberry. Who made it? Ruth glanced at Lena. We did, she said. Celeste smiled. Then it goes wherever you want it. Inside the preparation room, Nathan stood beside the empty flower stand with his hands in his coat pockets. When Celeste placed the arrangement there, he leaned close and touched a rosemary branch. "Dad hated funeral flowers," he said. Ruth smoothed one bruised white petal. "These aren't funeral flowers." Nathan looked at her. "They're his." Celeste took Ruth's coat and led her into a small consultation room while Nathan signed the clothing receipt. "We'll have him ready for the family viewing tomorrow at 4, she said. "If you change your mind about anything, call me, day or night." "Do people really call you at night about shirts? Shirts, hymns, cufflinks, hair parts. Once about a man's mustache. What was wrong with it? His second wife liked it. His first wife didn't." Ruth looked through the partly open door at Nathan. "Who won?" "The deceased." There was a photograph. Celeste's mouth was solemn, but her eyes were not. Ruth liked her better for that. Paige came in carrying a Florist invoice. "The lilies can't be canceled." "Put them in the lobby," Ruth said. "I could have them delivered to the church." "No, you ordered them for Frank. Let them come." Paige studied her, uncertain whether this was punishment. "They're flowers," Ruth said. "They didn't do anything." On Sunday afternoon, Frank looked like a man attempting to behave at a wedding. The new shirt was too crisp and too blue. Celeste had opened the collar and folded the cuffs back once, which helped, but Frank had never worn a shirt without immediately changing its shape. He pushed sleeves up. He tucked pens into pockets. He left smudges near buttons and pulled collars loose with one finger. Now everything lay smooth. Ruth stood beside the casket while Nathan and Paige waited near the back of the room. She touched Frank's collar. The fabric was cold. "They put you in a shirt for a cruise," she whispered. "You would hate that." His hair had been combed toward the wrong side. Ruth corrected it with 2 fingers. Celeste, watching from the doorway, did not interfere. Frank's hands rested one over the other. His nails were cleaner than they had been at any point in his working life. Even after retirement, dirt found him. He could water tomatoes and return looking as if he had rebuilt an engine. Ruth placed a sprig of rosemary beneath his left hand. The arrangement sat low across the foot of the casket. Overnight, one white rose had opened completely. Its petals curved outward, loose and vulnerable, while cedar branches reached around it. Nathan came to stand beside her. "He looks good," he said. "He looks dead." Nathan swallowed. "I'm not criticizing Celeste," Ruth said. "She did good work. I know. He just doesn't look good." "No." Paige remained by the chairs. Ruth could feel her effort not to approach, straighten, or offer an improvement. The lilies arrived 20 minutes before the doors opened. There were enough of them to suggest Frank had enjoyed a much grander life than he would have trusted. They rose from a white pedestal in a fan of glossy leaves, tied with a satin ribbon, printed "Beloved Husband." Paige stared at the ribbon. "I gave them your name. The catalog probably doesn't have Beloved Plumber. I can take it off." "Leave it. Are you sure?" Ruth looked at her. "I will tell you when I want something changed." Paige's hand dropped from the ribbon. "All right." People came early. Frank's former apprentice, Pete Donnelly, arrived in a suit that pulled across his stomach and stood at the casket for nearly 10 minutes. Pete had been 19 when Frank hired him, and 52 when Frank finally admitted Pete knew how to cut pipe without supervision. "He loaned me $600 once," Pete told Ruth. "When?" "94. My transmission went. He never told me." Pete looked alarmed. "I paid him back." "I'm sure you did. He said not to tell you because you'd make him put it in the books." "I would've." Pete laughed, then covered his mouth because he was at a funeral home. That's what he said. Women from First Methodist came in pairs, carrying sympathy cards and dishes despite the fact that the meal was not until the next day. Frances Givens brought a pound cake wrapped in foil and whispered that the church's coffee was not fit for grief. "It isn't fit for bingo," Ruth said. "That's why I brought my urn. Take it to Bellwether in the morning." Frances's eyebrows lifted. "The florist?" "The florist. I thought it closed." It did. Frances waited for an explanation. Ruth did not give one. "Well," Frances said finally, "I suppose closed places still have outlets, some of them." By 6, the guest book had filled 2 pages. People Ruth had not seen in years held her hands and told her stories Frank had omitted. He had repaired a widow's water heater on Christmas Eve and refused payment. He had spent 3 Saturdays teaching a neighbor how to install a sink, then secretly replaced everything the neighbor had installed. He had once driven 40 miles to turn off a valve because a customer did not know which direction was clockwise. Ruth listened, thanked them, and stored the stories somewhere beyond reach. She could not feel all of them yet. Marcy from Paige's crew arrived carrying the yellow recipe tin. She stood just inside the door, in a dark green dress and low boots, looking as nervous as she had with the clipboard. This was under the passenger seat of the donation truck, she said. It must have slid out of a box. Ruth took the tin. A dent crossed one corner that had not been there before. The lid still opened. Inside were index cards written in different hands. Ruth's mother's biscuits, Aunt June's lemon filling, Frank's chili, with 3 ingredients crossed out because he never followed his own recipe. A divider marked flowers held old customer notes Ruth had forgotten she kept. "Thank you," she said. Marcy looked toward Paige, who was speaking with one of Nathan's cousins near the lilies. "I really did think you'd moved," Marcy said. "I know. Paige told us the family had decided. I know that too." "We wouldn't have, Marcy." Ruth closed the tin. "You brought it back." Marcy nodded, grateful and miserable at once. Paige approached after Marcy left. "I didn't know that tin was in the kitchen load," she said. "It was in the kitchen. I didn't know it mattered." Ruth held it against her ribs. "That's why people ask." Paige looked toward the casket. "I know. You keep saying that. I keep learning it." Before Ruth could answer, Evelyn Hart from 2 doors down came up and embraced her. Evelyn wore gardenia perfume and had never mastered a quiet voice. "I'm glad Nathan is taking you in," she said. "I told Harold last night. At least Ruth won't be alone in that big house." Nathan heard. So did Paige. Ruth stepped back from Evelyn's embrace. "Nathan isn't taking me anywhere." Evelyn's eyes darted between them. "Oh, I thought, we haven't decided what happens to the house." Nathan shifted his weight. Paige said, "This probably isn't the time." "No," Ruth said. It wasn't. Evelyn retreated toward the lilies with the guilty speed of someone who had discovered gossip was still alive. Nathan lowered his voice. "Mom, nobody's trying to force you." Ruth looked at him. He corrected himself. "Not now." That was at least honest. Lena came at 7:15, wearing black trousers and the red cardigan, now correctly buttoned. She carried no flowers. She paused by the lilies, read the ribbon, and made a face. Paige intercepted her. "The arrangement is up front. I have eyes." Lena walked to the casket. She did not look at Frank's face immediately. She inspected the cedar, touched a white rose, and moved one winterberry stem half an inch to the right. "You could leave one thing alone," Ruth murmured. "I left most of it alone." Only then did Lena look at Frank. "He still owed me for the bathroom sink," she said. "He said you paid him in carnations. I paid him in 6 centerpieces. He said 5. Then he died owing me a centerpiece too." Ruth laughed. The sound startled her so badly she pressed the recipe tin to her stomach. Lena rested 2 fingers on the edge of the casket. "He came by after I closed." Ruth stopped laughing. "When?" "Couple months after. Said the shop looked lonely." "He didn't tell me." "He offered to fix the pipes before winter. I told him the building wasn't his problem. That never stopped him." "No." Lena's gaze remained on Frank. "He asked if I'd heard from you." "What did you say?" "I said I knew your address." Ruth waited for more, but Lena moved to the chairs and sat. At 8, Celeste dimmed the lights near the entry to signal that visiting hours were ending. The final guests collected coats and promised to see Ruth at the cemetery. Paige gathered sympathy cards into a handled bag. Nathan checked under chairs for forgotten umbrellas, a habit inherited directly from Frank. Lena waited until the room emptied. "You need tables tomorrow," she said. "Francis has 2 folding ones. You need 4. The shop can hold 4? If people stop believing they require personal space. Can you get 2? I have 3 upstairs." Ruth stared at her. "Why do you have 3 folding tables upstairs?" "I used one to hold laundry, one to hold tax records, and one to hold the other 2. Nathan approached with the coat Ruth had forgotten. "What time should we come?" Lena looked at Ruth before answering. 9, Ruth said. "The burial is at 11. Food can go in the back." Paige lifted the bag of cards. "I'll bring my warming trays." "Ask before you plug them in," Lena said. "The wiring has opinions. I'm beginning to understand the building." "You're not." Outside, Nathan asked again if Ruth would sleep at their house. "I want to go home. There's nothing there. My bed is there. The mattress is there. That's what I'm sleeping on." He looked ashamed, and Ruth was too tired to protect him from it. At the house, she carried the recipe tin into the empty kitchen. The overhead light seemed brighter without the table beneath it. She sat on the floor with her back against a cabinet and opened the section marked Flowers. Most of the cards were practical notes. Mrs. Collins, no carnations. Lutheran altar, nothing above 18 inches. Hospital delivery, use side door. Behind them was a card in Lena's narrow handwriting. Ruth, remember that empty space is part of the arrangement. Stop trying to fill every inch. Ruth sat with the card until the furnace clicked off and the silence returned. Then she placed it upright on the bare floor, in the pale rectangle where the dining table had been. Ruth slipped Lena's card into the recipe tin before carrying it to Bellwether. The front windows had fogged from the furnace. Inside, Paige stood over a warming tray with its cord in her hand, waiting. "I haven't plugged it in," she said. "Congratulations," Lena called from the back room. "You can be taught." Nathan was unfolding chairs. He had arranged them in neat rows facing the counter, as if Frank's funeral meal required an audience. "Turn some sideways," Ruth said. "People want to talk, not attend another service." Nathan moved the chairs without arguing. Frances Givens arrived with her coffee urn, 2-pound cakes, and the offended expression of a woman who had been forced to trust other people with beverages. She found an outlet behind the counter and looked at Lena. "May I?" Lena pointed to Paige. She tested it. Paige nodded. "It's on a different circuit from the warming trays." Frances plugged in the urn. "You always were organized." Paige's smile was quick and thin. "That's what they tell me." By 10, the back room held foil-covered casseroles, ham biscuits, deviled eggs, 3 kinds of potato salad, and 1 bowl of green leaves brought by a woman who had recently started describing food as fuel. Ruth placed the yellow recipe tin on a high shelf where it could not be mistaken for decoration or carried away with dirty dishes. Lena had put the pink bathrobe on a headless mannequin in the front window. She tied a black ribbon around its waist. "Is that necessary?" Ruth asked. "People expect a display. For a funeral meal? It's modest. It has feathers around the collar. Grief is personal." Ruth removed the robe and laid it behind the counter. Lena waited until Ruth turned away, then put it back on the mannequin. At 10:30, Nathan drove Ruth to the cemetery. Paige followed with the warming trays still unplugged in the back of her car. Lena refused to attend the burial. "I already said goodbye," she told Ruth. "And somebody has to stop Frances from boiling coffee down to roofing tar." The morning had warmed just enough to soften the ground. Water darkened the edges of the grave where the green covering did not quite reach. Folding chairs sank unevenly into the grass. Ruth sat between Nathan and an empty chair. Paige had chosen to stand behind them, perhaps because she expected more people, or perhaps because she no longer trusted herself to decide where she belonged. The minister spoke about Frank's generosity, stubbornness, and service. He had known Frank for 11 years and had learned not to ask for plumbing advice unless he had 40 minutes available. Several people laughed. Ruth watched a brown leaf tumble against the casket and catch beneath one brass handle. The arrangement rested on top. The white roses had opened during the night. Lena had been right about their shortened lives, but they had lasted long enough. Their edges were soft and brown now, the cedar still green around them. Nathan reached for Ruth's hand when the minister began the final prayer. His palm felt rougher than she remembered. He had inherited Frank's work hands, but not his ease with them. Nathan built additions, decks, and kitchens. He could walk into a bare room and see what it might become. Apparently, he could do that with his mother, too. The casket-lowering mechanism clicked. Nathan's grip tightened. Paige rested one hand on his shoulder. She did not touch Ruth. The casket descended slowly. The arrangement remained above, supported by the frame, making it look for a moment as if Frank had gone down and left his garden behind. Ruth had expected to say something in her mind. A last private sentence. "Thank you, perhaps," or "I'm sorry." Or, "You could have labeled the shutoff valve like I asked." Nothing came. A worker removed the arrangement and offered it to her. "Leave it," Ruth said. He placed it beside the grave. People passed Ruth one by one. Pete Donnelly kissed her cheek. Frances said the coffee would be ready. Evelyn Hart apologized for speaking out of turn, though not for listening in turn. Celeste waited at a distance until Ruth nodded that she was ready to leave. At the car, Nathan opened the passenger door. Ruth looked back at the grave. The green covering had been folded away, exposing a dark, clean rectangle in the earth. He needed an old shirt, she said. Nathan stood beside the open door. I know. No, I mean, he needed something old. That shirt made it look like he'd never lived in it. Nathan's face folded before he could stop it. Ruth touched his sleeve. You found what you could. I should have stopped them. Yes. He nodded, crying without sound. Ruth put both arms around him. He bent over her shoulder, heavy and awkward, no longer the son who expected her to make a hard thing disappear. She held him until Paige looked away to give them privacy. Then they went to the Shuttered Florist. Cars filled both sides of the street. Someone had parked halfway onto the curb in front of the tax office. Through Bellwether's uncovered windows, Ruth saw people standing shoulder to shoulder beneath the painted leaves. The shop was too warm. The furnace had accepted the gathering as a personal challenge. Coats covered the chairs, the card rack, and one end of the counter. Francis's coffee had already passed strong and was approaching industrial. It was perfect. People ate from paper plates balanced on their knees. They leaned against empty display shelves and told stories they had not told at the funeral home. Without soft carpet and lowered voices, Frank returned to his natural size. Pete described the time Frank cut into a pipe that was still under pressure and knocked himself backward into a bathtub. He told us the coupling failed, Ruth said. The coupling was fine, Pete said. Frank forgot the main. I married a liar. Only about plumbing. That's where he had the most vocabulary. Laughter moved through the room. Lena stayed behind the counter refilling coffee and preventing guests from setting drinks near the old cash register. Whenever someone thanked her for opening the shop, she said, Ruth asked, in a tone that made the distinction important. Paige worked in the back. She replaced empty trays, cleared plates, and asked permission before shifting so much as a serving spoon. Her movements were efficient but stripped of their usual confidence. Every time someone admired the gathering, her face tightened. This feels so much more personal than the church room, Francis told her. Paige glanced at Ruth. It was Ruth's idea. You did a lovely job cleaning. Lena and Ruth did the important part. Lena, passing with a tray of biscuits, said, Paige washed the windows. Paige looked almost startled by the credit. Near the front window, Evelyn Hart told another neighbor that Ruth had saved the day after an unfortunate household mix-up. Ruth heard only part of it. Paige heard all of it. She set down a stack of plates and walked into the back room. A minute later, Nathan followed. Ruth waited until Francis began reorganizing the forks, then went after them. Paige stood beside the sink with both hands braced on its chipped edge. Nathan faced her. I told you Marcy would talk, he said. Marcy didn't tell Evelyn. I checked. You checked? She called me this morning to ask whether Ruth got the tin. Nathan lowered his voice. Then, how does everybody know? They don't know, Ruth said from the doorway. They know the meal moved, Nathan turned. Evelyn said there was a mix-up. There was. What did you tell her? That I hadn't decided where I was living. You made it sound like we were pushing you out. No, you heard what it sounded like. Paige straightened. She hasn't told anyone. Nathan looked at her. She hasn't, Paige repeated. I heard people ask. She could have told them everything. Thank you for your character reference, Ruth said. I'm not defending your character. What are you doing? Paige looked toward the front room, where another burst of laughter rose over Pete's voice. I'm saying Nathan is angry at the wrong person. Nathan took a step back. I'm not angry. Both women looked at him. He rubbed a hand over his mouth. Fine. I don't want this turning into some story where Paige came in and stole your house. She didn't steal my house, Ruth said. Paige's shoulders eased slightly. She just emptied it. The relief disappeared. Nathan looked at the floor. Can we talk about this later? We could have talked about it earlier. Lena appeared behind Ruth holding an empty platter. There are people in my front room trying to cut pound cake with a plastic knife. If this family intends to destroy itself, pick a less busy afternoon. Ruth took the platter. Nathan returned to the meal. Paige stayed at the sink. I did think you'd be relieved, she said. Ruth turned back. When my father died, my mother left his coffee cup on the table for 11 months. She wouldn't wash it. There were flies in it, Ruth. Paige pressed her lips together. The whole house became a place where nothing could move because he had touched everything. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to erase Frank. You erased me. Paige flinched. Ruth regretted the sentence and did not take it back. From the front room, someone called for Paige. She dried her hands and left without answering. The last guest departed after 2. They carried leftovers, promised to call, and ignored Ruth when she told them she did not need more food. Frances poured the remaining coffee down the sink, where it went reluctantly. A tall woman with silver braids lingered near the counter. Her name was Dorothy Vale. Ruth knew her from the county library board, but had never spoken to her for more than 5 minutes. "Who made the arrangement?" Dorothy asked. "Lena and I." "My wife died in March," Dorothy said. "The florist sent pink roses. She hated pink." "I'm sorry. Next month would have been our anniversary. I thought I might take something to the cemetery that looked like her garden." Ruth glanced at Lena. Lena became deeply interested in wiping the same spot on the counter. "The shop is closed," Ruth said. "I can see that. We don't have fresh stock. I have a yard." Dorothy wrote her number on the back of a sympathy card and placed it beside the register. "If you decide you can help." After she left, Lena picked up the card. "No," she said. "I didn't say anything. You looked, I think, with my face. You certainly don't think with your schedule." Ruth began stacking cups. "We made one arrangement and hosted 47 people in a building with one dependable outlet. 49. I wasn't counting Nathan and Paige. Why not? They worked." Paige came from the back carrying the washed warming trays. "We should get Ruth home." Lena put Dorothy's card under the register instead of throwing it away. At the house, Nathan carried in food while Paige remained on the porch with Ruth. "There's something we need to discuss," Paige said. "Not today. The floor contractor is scheduled for Wednesday. Cancel him. We paid a deposit, then ask for it back. It's non-refundable." Ruth looked through the open door at the bare hall. "How many things have you paid for?" Paige did not answer quickly enough. "Paige, the drawings, the floor deposit, the photographer's booking fee. For my house. We built our plans around what you said." Ruth stepped inside. "No," she said. "You built them around the part you wanted to hear." Nathan came out of the kitchen holding a foil pan of macaroni and cheese. What part did she want to hear? Paige stayed on the porch. Ruth took off her coat and hung it on the only remaining hook in the hall, the part where I said this house might be too much for me. Nathan set the pan on the floor because there was no table. "You said you liked the apartment plans." I said the drawing looked nice. "You said the windows would get good light. They face east." "That was an observation." "Mom, come on. You come on." I was sitting beside your father while he breathed through a machine. Paige put a drawing in my lap and asked whether I liked the windows. Paige stepped inside, closing the door carefully behind her. "That's not how it happened. It is exactly how it happened. You'd been talking about downsizing for months. I talked about hiring somebody to clean the gutters. You said you didn't want to be responsible for the yard. Frank had just fallen in the yard." Nathan looked at Paige. "You told me she was ready." Paige's arms stiffened at her sides. She was participating in the conversation. "I was surviving the conversation," Ruth said. The foil lid on the macaroni pan gave a soft metallic pop as it cooled. Nathan lowered himself onto the bottom stair. "Dad told me to take care of you. Your father also told Pete not to tell me about a $600 loan. Frank was not a reliable source for what I wanted. He wanted you with family, so do I." Nathan looked up, confused. Ruth sat in Frank's recliner. Its return had left the room looking even emptier, but the worn seat received her shape without judgment. "I want to be with family," she said. "I do not want to live in a room you designed while I was watching my husband die. It's not a room. It's 700 square feet." Paige closed her eyes. Ruth stared at Nathan. "That is what you heard?" "No. I'm saying you'd have your own kitchen." "I have my own kitchen." Neither of them looked toward it. Paige came farther into the room. "We moved too quickly." "You moved while I was at the funeral home." "Yes. Why?" Paige hesitated. Nathan answered. "The flooring contractor had an opening." Ruth laughed once. "It was a cancellation," he said. "We'd have waited 6 weeks otherwise. You thought 6 weeks was too long, but one day after Frank died was enough." "That sounds terrible when you say it like that." "It sounded terrible while it was happening too." Paige took the folded business card from her pocket. On the back, beneath the storage address, she wrote a 6-digit access code. "Everything that can be returned will be returned," she said. "I want the inventory. I have it. Every truck, every destination, every receipt. You can have all of it. And cancel the floor contractor. I'll call tonight. The photographer. Yes. Anyone else who believes my house belongs to you." Paige's pen stopped. Nobody thinks it belongs to us. You hired them. For work we expected to do after the sale. What sale price did you expect? Nathan stood. We never settled on a number. What number did you use for your plans? Silence gathered in the bare room. Ruth looked from one to the other. Banks don't lend money against conversations. We haven't borrowed against the house, Paige said quickly. We used our savings for the drawings and deposits. How much? Nathan said. It doesn't matter. It mattered enough to empty my closets. 4,800, Paige said. Nathan turned toward her. 4,860, she corrected. Architectural drawings, the survey, the floor deposit, and photography. Ruth folded her hands. It was not ruinous money. Nathan and Paige could recover from it. That almost made the presumption worse. They had spent just enough to feel committed and not enough to think they needed her signature. You paid to plan your own apartment, Ruth said. The apartment was for you, Nathan replied. The garage is yours. He looked away. Ruth pointed to the foil pan. Put the food in the refrigerator, then go home. Nathan started to protest, but Paige touched his arm. This time, he let her lead him out. The storage facility stood behind a tire dealership at the edge of town. Its metal buildings were painted the same beige as hearing aids and winter grass. Ruth arrived the next morning before Paige entered the code and learned the gate would not open because Paige's company had put the unit under its business account. She waited in the car with the engine off. At 9:06, Paige's SUV pulled in beside her. She climbed out wearing jeans and an old sweatshirt instead of company clothes. I changed the account contact to your name, she said. They need you to sign at the office. Why wasn't it in my name to begin with? I was trying to save you paperwork. Ruth got out of the car. You have to retire that sentence. Inside the office, a man named DIL asked Ruth for identification and offered condolences while avoiding any indication that he knew why a living woman's house occupied one of his estate units. The unit was larger than Ruth expected and fuller than she could bear. Paige had organized it beautifully. Her sofa stood upright beneath a protective cover. Boxes rose in straight columns, labels facing the aisle. Lamps had been wrapped in moving blankets and secured with stretch film. Ruth's winter clothes hung inside 2 wardrobe boxes. Every object had been protected from breakage, except the life it came from. Ruth stepped inside. This is the main household unit, Paige said. Personal documents are in the smaller climate-controlled unit. Resale items were taken to Carver's. Donations, I have your list. I printed a new one. Of course you did. A binder lay on top of a box marked Kitchen Limited Keep. Paige opened it to a color-coded inventory. Blue meant storage, green meant resale, orange meant donation, red meant disposal. Ruth turned one page, then another. You marked my bread machine for disposal. It doesn't work. It works if you hold the lid down. That is not working. It makes bread. Paige uncapped a pen. I'll change it. To what? Keep. I don't want it. Paige stared at her. Ruth almost enjoyed that. It is broken. I simply wanted the opportunity to say so. Paige drew a line through the entry. Dispose? Ask Lena if she wants it. She enjoys machinery with personality. They found Ruth's sheets in a box marked Linens Best. Paige had kept 2 sets and donated the rest. Frank's pillowcase was among them, washed and folded into a square. Ruth lifted it to her face. It smelled only of detergent. Why did you wash these? They were laundry. He slept on this Thursday. Paige looked down at the binder. I didn't think. No, I know that isn't an excuse. No, they worked down the aisle. Ruth chose what should return immediately. 2 lamps, bedding, towels, her coffee maker, the everyday dishes, the kitchen knives, Frank's side table, and the cedar chest that had belonged to her mother. She left the sofa wrapped. Without the rug or other chairs, it would turn the living room into a waiting area. Behind a stack of boxes, she found Frank's red flannel shirt folded with his gardening clothes. Ruth pressed it against her chest. I thought all of his clothes went to donation, she said. That box was in the mudroom. It went on the storage truck. Frank's gardening gloves lay below the shirt. One fingertip had split open. Ruth placed the flannel shirt with the items going home. Where are his tools? Paige flipped pages. Nathan has them. All of them? The main hand tools and the larger equipment. Pete took 2 specialty kits Frank promised him. Did Frank promise him? Nathan said he did. Ruth closed the binder. Paige's shoulders fell. I'll ask. No, I will. Ruth, Nathan works with those tools. So did Frank. He thought they were meant for him. He might be right. Paige waited. But nobody asked me. I'll have him bring them back. Ruth looked at the carefully numbered boxes. You still think bringing things back fixes the taking. I don't know what fixes it. Neither do I. That answer appeared to unsettle Paige more than anger would have. At Carver's resale warehouse, Ruth learned that the dining table had sold Saturday afternoon. The manager, a cheerful man with a silver mustache, consulted his computer and told them it had gone for $825, less a 30% commission. It moved fast, he said. Solid maple does. Ruth stood beside a row of upholstered chairs that smelled faintly of dust and other people's houses. Who bought it? I can't provide customer information. Can you call them? I can pass along a message, but completed sales are final, Paige said. I'll refund their money. The manager shook his head. They're not obligated to return it. It wasn't authorized. His cheer faded. Your company consigned it. Paige's face reddened. Ruth touched one of the chairs. Call them. I'll do what I can. Her walnut entry table remained unsold. So did the brass lamp, 2-bedroom chairs, and Frank's collection of plumbing books. Ruth marked them for return. A ceramic mixing bowl had sold for $12. A stranger had purchased Frank's old desk chair for $40. The blue shirt was still missing. By 2, Paige's crew had returned the selected belongings to the house. Ruth allowed Marcy and one of the men inside, only after she walked through each room and said where everything belonged. Paige stayed by the truck with the binder, checking off items but making no decisions. The bed frame returned first, then the sheets, lamps, towels, dishes, and coffee maker. Marcy placed the yellow recipe tin on the kitchen counter. It goes there? She asked. Ruth considered the pale rectangle on the floor where the dining table had been. For now. Frank's red flannel shirt went over the back of his recliner. The house no longer looked cleared. It looked interrupted. When the truck left, Ruth made coffee in a real mug and sat on the bottom stair. Paige lingered in the doorway. Carver's called, she said. They left a message for the people who bought the table. Thank you. If they don't call back, I'll keep trying. Ruth drank her coffee. Paige shifted her weight. The floor contractor kept $1,200. That was your contract. Yes. I'm sorry you lost money. Paige gave her a tired look. You don't sound sorry. I can understand a cost without wishing I had paid it for you. Paige nodded slowly. That sounds like something Lena would say. It's something I said. After she left, Ruth's phone rang. Lena did not bother with hello. Dorothy Vale has hydrangeas, rosemary, and some very aggressive lavender. You called her. She called me. You hid her card under the register, so it wouldn't get grease on it. Ruth smiled into her coffee. When does she want the arrangement? She asked. Next Thursday. The shop is closed. I'm aware. The cooler is dead. I have buckets. Ruth looked at Frank's red shirt across the empty room. I'll come tomorrow, she said. Lena was quiet for a moment. Bring shears, she said. The good pair stays here. Ruth brought the cheap shears from her garage. Lena looked at them, then at her. Those won't cut lavender, they cut cedar. They chewed cedar until it surrendered. You told me the good pair stayed here. I didn't tell you to bring garden scissors from a grocery store rack. They were Frank's. Lena accepted this as if it explained both the condition of the blades and Ruth's refusal to replace them. Dorothy Vale was waiting in the front room with 2 galvanized buckets and a canvas gardening apron over her clothes. Without the funeral tables and coats, Bellwether looked closed again. Dust had already begun reclaiming the shelves Paige washed. I brought samples, Dorothy said. One bucket held hydrangeas whose green petals had darkened toward burgundy. The other contained rosemary, lavender, and branches of small red rose hips. My wife called those hydrangeas swamp flowers, Dorothy said. She planted 12 of them. What was her name? Ruth asked. Paula. What did Paula like besides flowers she insulted? Order. Black coffee. Opera when somebody else was driving. She grew vegetables in straight rows and flowers wherever she had room. Lena lifted a hydrangea. When is the anniversary? Thursday. And you want it at the cemetery? For a few hours. I'll bring it home after. That's sensible, Lena said. Cemetery deer eat anything with sentimental value. Dorothy turned to Ruth. How much? We can't charge you, Ruth said. Lena made a sound. The shop isn't licensed, Ruth continued. We can make it as a favor. I didn't ask for a favor. You brought the flowers. You have skill I don't have. Lena pointed to Dorothy. I like her. We can renew the license if we decide to do more, Ruth said. For this, bring lunch on Thursday. What kind? Lena said. Anything without mayonnaise. Ruth said. Lena believes mayonnaise is a structural defect. It disguises indecision. Dorothy agreed to bring roast beef sandwiches and left the buckets behind. Ruth carried them to the workroom. A steady drip hit the blue tub beneath the ceiling stain, though no rain had fallen since Saturday. That's concerning, she said. Condensation. From what? The building. Buildings don't sweat indoors for emotional reasons. This one might. Ruth climbed onto a stool and pressed the stained ceiling tile. It gave slightly under her fingertip. Don't poke it, Lena said. I'm checking. You check until things become jobs. It needs a roofer. It has needed a roofer for 6 years. They're aware of each other. How much? The last estimate was $19,000. Ruth stepped down. For this little roof? He wanted to replace part of the decking and redo the flashing. Then he used the phrase underlying conditions, which is how men add $5,000 to anything. Did you get another estimate? I closed the shop. That isn't an estimate. It ended the dripping over customers. Lena carried the hydrangeas to the sink and turned the left faucet. It coughed, spat brown water, then ran clear. Ruth had forgotten how much a bellwether's survival had once depended on accepting something broken for one more season. Aunt June kept buckets under leaks, wire around cooler handles, and a rubber mallet beside the back door for winter mornings. Lena had inherited the habits along with the building. Ruth stripped leaves from the hydrangeas. Why didn't you sell? I tried. Ruth looked up. 2 offers. One man wanted to make it a vape store. The other wanted the lot and planned to knock everything down. You could have taken the money. I could have married Frank too, but you got there first. Frank would have driven you insane. He drove me insane without the tax benefits. Lena leaned against the sink. The offers weren't much. After fees and the small mortgage, I'd have had enough to rent somewhere unpleasant and watch somebody throw the work table in a dumpster. You still have a mortgage? Not everybody married a plumber with a fear of debt. Ruth returned to the leaves. Frank wasn't afraid of debt. He was afraid of interest. He explained compound interest to me at your wedding. He explained it to the bartender. The back doorbell rang as the old frame shifted in the wind. Lena pressed her thumb into her palm. Ruth noticed. Sit down. No, you've been standing all morning. You've been noticing all morning. I'm capable of noticing without turning you into a project. Recent development? Ruth set the leaves aside. I'm working on it. Lena sat. They spent the morning testing shapes with Dorothy's flowers. Ruth wanted the hydrangeas low and irregular, with rosemary crossing through them, like garden paths. Lena wanted something narrow enough for Dorothy to carry, without spilling water across her car. Neither mentioned that they were planning one arrangement as if it might require a production schedule. At noon, Ruth went upstairs looking for the bathroom because the downstairs sink had begun backing up. A narrow staircase rose behind the stockroom. The 3rd step creaked, the 8th tilted slightly toward the wall. At the top, she found a small apartment filled with things Lena had not wanted downstairs and had not discarded. Folding tables leaned behind the door. Tax boxes covered a love seat. A drying rack held 2 sweaters and a collection of dish towels. Sunlight came through 3 front windows and fell across a faded blue rug. The kitchen was barely a kitchen. 4 cabinets, a short refrigerator, and a stove with burners the size of dessert plates. Beyond it was a bedroom with a brass bed frame covered in unopened mail and old display baskets. Bathroom's on the left, Lena called from below. Do not inspect anything. I'm walking through it. You can walk without evaluating. The bathroom had a clawfoot tub, a cracked mirror, and a new toilet. Ruth called down. Frank installed this. How do you know? He always set the tank crooked. It isn't crooked, it leans left. Then the building settled. A second door opened from the bedroom onto a narrow landing above the alley. Ruth tried the latch. It worked. The apartment smelled closed, but not ruined. When she came downstairs, Lena had arranged the rose hips into a tight, joyless fan. Absolutely not, Ruth said. Lena pulled them out. You were up there too long. Do you live up there? Not since my niece started objecting. I rent a 1-story duplex on Park. So the apartment is storage. The apartment is none of your business. A truck pulled up in front of the shop. Nathan came through the door carrying Frank's red metal toolbox. His work clothes were dusted with drywall, and irritation showed in the tight way he held the handle. "I have a job in the middle of demolition," he said. "I can't bring every tool today. I didn't ask for every tool today. You told Paige everything had to come back. I said I wanted to decide." He set the toolbox on the counter with a heavy clank. "Decide what? Whether I'm allowed to keep Dad's pipe wrenches? Whether he promised them to you? Whether Pete is supposed to have the specialty kits? Whether there's something I might want before you divide the garage? You don't use pipe wrenches?" "I used one in 1988, Lena said, wrongly. Nathan glanced toward her. "This is family business." Lena rose from the stool. "Then conduct it somewhere my roof isn't dripping." Ruth picked up the toolbox. "Bring it to the back." Nathan followed her to the work table. He saw Dorothy's buckets. "You're doing flowers now?" "One arrangement. Paige said you held the funeral meal here. You attended. I mean, are you reopening this place?" "No." Lena, from the front, said, "Probably not." Ruth unlatched the toolbox. Inside, Frank's tools lay in the disorder he called a system. Adjustable wrenches occupied the bottom beneath screwdrivers, tape, a small level, and 2 rolls of plumber's emery cloth. Frank's initials were scratched into most handles. Ruth lifted a stubby screwdriver with yellow paint on it. "He kept this in the kitchen drawer," she said. Nathan took it from her and turned it in his fingers. "He used it to fix the old dishwasher. He used it to make the old dishwasher louder." Nathan almost smiled. Ruth removed the screwdriver, Frank's folding ruler, and one adjustable wrench small enough to fit her hand. She placed them on the table. "That's all I want from this box." Nathan looked at the 3 tools. "You made me leave a job for that?" "No. I made you bring back what you took so I could choose 3 things." "You could have asked." "I did ask." "You said the tools were already yours." "Dad told me they would be." "Then now they are." He stared at her, still angry but unable to locate the shape of his grievance. Ruth closed the toolbox and slid it back. "The pipe threader stays at my place," he said. "Fine. And Pete has the brazing kit. If Frank promised it, fine." Nathan did not reach for the toolbox. "This feels like punishment. It feels like permission arriving after you expected entitlement. I'm his son. I know who you are. He wanted me to have his tools, and I have given them to you. You didn't give me something that was already mine." Ruth put both hands on the work table. "That sentence is the whole problem." Lena went silent in the front room. Nathan's face darkened. "You mean the house? I mean anything you have decided belongs to you because Frank died. I don't think all your things belong to me. You put my furniture on a truck. Paige did that? No. You stood in the garage and measured." "We were going to pay you," Nathan said. "At the price you chose. We talked about $240. Frank talked about $240 3 years ago, when the house next door sold for $260. We can afford $240. That is information about you, not the value of my house." Nathan's voice dropped. "You know we can't afford it at market, I know. And you'd rather sell to strangers?" "I haven't decided to sell." He gestured around the workroom. "So, what are you doing here?" Ruth looked at the stained ceiling, the dead cooler, the hydrangeas drinking from galvanized buckets. "I'm making something Dorothy asked me to make." "This place failed, Mom." Lena appeared in the doorway. "This place closed." "What's the difference? One is a verdict. The other is a door." Nathan gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "You're both almost 70. The roof leaks, the stairs are dangerous, and Mom has slept alone in an empty house for 4 nights. Because you're encouraging this." Ruth stiffened. "Lena did not empty my house. I'm trying to keep you from making a decision because you're mad at us. And I'm trying to make one decision you didn't make first." Nathan lifted the toolbox. "Paige thinks you're going to punish us with the house. Paige should stop thinking about my house." He left without saying goodbye. The front doorbell gave its tired clunk behind him. Lena picked up the small wrench Ruth had kept. "You're almost 70? 68. Practically an infant." Ruth took the wrench from her. For several minutes, they returned to Dorothy's flowers. The argument remained in the room, changing the air without changing the work. Lena finally said, "The stairs are dangerous. The 3rd one creaks, the 8th tilts. Nathan's garage apartment has 14 stairs. They planned a chairlift. They planned everything." Lena adjusted a hydrangea stem. "What are you asking?" Ruth looked toward the narrow staircase behind the stockroom. "Nothing yet," she said. "I'm noticing the windows. Dorothy returned Thursday carrying 3 roast beef sandwiches, a thermos of black coffee, and a photograph of Paula kneeling in a flower bed. She would object to this picture, Dorothy said. Paula wore a broad straw hat and mud across one cheek. She was squinting up at the camera with garden shears in one hand, surrounded by hydrangeas growing at different heights. She looks annoyed, Lena said. She was. I had stepped on the drip hose. Ruth propped the photograph against a jar on the work table. The arrangement had already taken shape in a low moss-colored bowl Dorothy brought from home. The hydrangeas created weight without symmetry. Lavender rose above them in loose spikes, while rosemary and rose hips crossed through the center. Dorothy walked around the table once. "It isn't pretty," she said. Lena's chin lifted. Dorothy touched one hydrangea petal. "It looks like her." Lena lowered her chin. Ruth showed Dorothy how to carry the bowl from underneath and gave her a folded towel for the passenger seat. Dorothy tried to press $200 into her hand. "No," Ruth said. "You worked. We aren't licensed. You worked anyway. Bring the bowl back when you're finished." Dorothy put the money on the table. Lena picked it up and placed it in Dorothy's apron pocket. "If you get us fined, it will cost more than this. Then get licensed. People keep telling me what to do in my own building." Dorothy looked toward the ceiling as a drop struck the blue tub. "Start with the roof." After she left, Ruth divided the sandwiches. Lena took hers apart to inspect the horseradish. "She'll tell people," Lena said. "She sits on the library board. She tells people when the copier jams." "We can say no. We already said no. We made the arrangement. That was a personal favor. For a woman you've spoken to twice." Ruth poured coffee from Dorothy's thermos. "I've spoken to her at least 6 times. Then you're practically sisters." The front door clunked. Celeste from the funeral home stood outside holding a cardboard carrier with 2 coffees. Ruth let her in. "I was downtown," Celeste said. "I thought I'd check whether you survived Monday." "Barely," Lena said. 49 people. I counted 47. 2 were working." Celeste set the coffee down and saw the photograph of Paula. "Dorothy Vale? You know her?" Ruth asked. "I handled Paula's service." "Pink roses?" Celeste winced. "The family chose from a catalog. Dorothy chose nothing pink this time." Celeste studied the empty buckets, the arrangement scraps, and the clean patch on the work table. "Are you taking orders?" "No," Lena said. "Not yet," Ruth said at the same time. They looked at each other. Celeste lifted both hands. "I didn't ask to start trouble." "You brought coffee," Ruth said. "That excuses some things." Celeste explained that families often wanted arrangements made with garden flowers, work gloves, recipe cards, or other personal objects. Most local florists were willing to incorporate keepsakes, but only into standard designs and only if the family delivered everything labeled. "People don't know how to ask for what they mean," she said. "You knew how Frank should look." "We knew Frank," Lena replied. "You knew what questions to ask, Dorothy. That does not constitute a business. No. But it might constitute a phone number I keep." Lena drank one of the coffees Celeste had brought. "Keep Potter's number. Potter sent the lilies." Lena looked offended all over again. After Celeste left, Ruth found an old ledger beneath the register. Lena had recorded Bellwether's final year in blue ink. Revenue declined month by month. Rent had never appeared because Lena owned the building, but property tax, mortgage payments, utilities, delivery, fuel, insurance, supplies, and payroll consumed nearly everything. "You paid yourself $6,000 that year," Ruth said. "I ate a lot of crackers. What did the holiday quarter look like? Wreaths, centerpieces, red hands, and people complaining that pine needles fell off pine." Ruth turned a page. Funeral work was steady. People remained inconsiderate enough to die year-round. And workshops? 3. Everyone drank wine, cut their fingers, and left believing they had talent. Did they pay? They paid very well. Lena took the ledger away. "Do not make a hopeful face at my numbers. I'm making a mathematical face. You use the same face." They spent the afternoon listing what a limited reopening would require. A business license was the least expensive item. Liability insurance was not. The front bathroom would need work before they invited groups. The cooler could be replaced with a smaller used unit if they stopped pretending Bellwether needed to stock flowers for walk-in traffic. The roof remained $19,000 until a second roofer said otherwise. Ruth wrote each number on a pad. "You're putting things in columns," Lena said. I kept books for 41 years, for plumbing. Water runs through both businesses. Flowers don't back up into basements. Neither did Frank's plumbing, according to Frank. At the bottom, Ruth wrote, apartment rent. Lena reached across and drew a line through it. No, you haven't heard a number. You were married 43 years. You buried him Monday. You do not move above a dead florist on Thursday. I didn't say today. You thought it loudly. The house doesn't feel like mine. That will change when you put your things back. Some of them. Lena's eyes went to the empty area in front where the funeral tables had stood. You are angry, she said. Yes. You are lonely. Yes. You want to make both problems look like a project. Ruth put down the pen. I'm aware of the pattern. Awareness is not the same as stopping. What do you want me to do? Sit in Frank's chair until I become part of it? I want you to know whether you're choosing this place or fleeing that one. The sentence struck cleanly. Ruth closed the ledger. Lena looked away first. And I won't take your house money. I didn't offer it. You put roof beside apartment rent. That is an offer wearing sensible shoes. You can't keep the building dry. I kept it this long. That isn't the same as keeping it. Lena's face hardened. You came back for one funeral. Do not inspect my ceiling and turn yourself into my rescue. Ruth stood. I didn't abandon you because I didn't care. You abandoned me very responsibly. Frank's mother couldn't be alone, so I was. Ruth's hand remained on the ledger. I thought I'd come back. So did I. The dead cooler clicked as metal shifted inside it. Ruth took her coat and left. At home, a real estate agent named Monica Kerr walked through the rooms with a tablet and soft-soled shoes. Ruth had called her because Monica had sold Evelyn Hart's sister's house without once using the phrase dream home. She was in her late 50s, wore her gray hair cropped short, and asked before opening closets. The furniture being gone isn't a problem, Monica said. Some came back. I wondered about the chair. Frank's recliner sat alone with the red flannel shirt over its back. Monica inspected the kitchen floor. Leave the vinyl. A buyer will either appreciate the oak underneath or replace everything because they saw a picture online. Paying to guess is a poor investment. Ruth liked her. After measuring and reviewing nearby sales, Monica gave a likely range between $315,000 and $330,000. The number did not surprise Ruth. She had followed property taxes and insurance values. Hearing it aloud still changed the air. My son expected to buy for $240,000, she said. Can he buy at market? No. Monica sat on the bottom stair. Do you want the highest price, or do you want your son to have the house? I want him to stop believing those are the same gift. That isn't a real estate answer. It's the only one I have. Monica left her comparative report and no contract. Ruth set it beside the yellow recipe tin. That evening, Nathan and Paige came after Ruth called them. Paige had brought the complete inventory binder. Nathan brought no tools and did not remove his coat. Ruth gave them Monica's report. Nathan read the first page twice. $325? That's the middle. The place needs work. Then your offer can explain that. He put the report down. You called an agent before talking to us? I've been talking to you. No, you've been telling us everything we did wrong. Paige read the report. The comparable sales are fair. Nathan turned on her. Whose side are you on? The side with numbers. You told me we could make $240 work. We can. That doesn't make the house worth $240. Ruth watched them discover a disagreement that had existed beneath their plans all along. Nathan faced Ruth. Are you listing it? I think so. Because of Paige? No. Paige's eyes lifted. I can't stay here to prove I wasn't pushed out, Ruth said. And I won't stay so you can buy it cheaply enough to call my sacrifice a family plan. We would take care of you. You would give me 700 square feet of my own money. Nathan paced to the window. So, where will you go? I'm considering the apartment above Bellwether. He turned. The Florist. Yes. You told me you weren't reopening it. I'm not. Not yet. Paige closed the binder. Is the apartment safe? The stairs need repair. The toilet leans. Of course it does. The front windows get good light. Nathan stared at her. Lena is using you. Lena said no. That stopped him. She thinks I'm making a grief decision, Ruth continued. She may be right. Then don't make it. I'm giving myself 30 days. Monica won't list the house until then. I'll restore what I want. Restored, get another roof estimate for Lena, inspect the apartment, and make a budget. At the end, I'll decide. Nathan shook his head. 30 days doesn't fix grief. No, it does prevent you from fixing the floors. Paige's mouth almost moved. Nathan saw it and became angrier. He walked out without taking the real estate report. Paige remained. "I'll talk to him," she said. "Don't translate me. That isn't what I meant. It's what you do." Paige tucked the binder under her arm. Sometimes he needs it. Then let him learn the language. After she left, Ruth called Lena. "I'm taking 30 days, she said. "For what?" "To decide whether I'm fleeing." Lena was quiet. "I want a roof estimate," Ruth continued. "A real one. I want to know the apartment rent, utilities, and what it would cost to repair the stairs. I'm not offering partnership money. I'm gathering information. You sound like Frank buying a water heater. He usually bought the right one. After visiting 4 stores, will you let me inspect the apartment?" "You already did, with permission." Another silence. $600 a month, Lena said. "Utilities included, until you start mining coal up there. That's below market. The toilet leans. $700, $650. You carry your own laundry. Agreed, if I choose it." Lena sighed. 30 days. Ruth looked around the house. The returned lamps warmed small islands of the living room, leaving the empty dining space beyond them untouched. And Lena? "What? If I choose the shop, I'm not promising forever. You never did. I'm promising to tell you before I leave." The silence lasted longer. "All right," Lena said. "That's worth more than the extra 50. The second roofer was a woman named Gloria Finch, who wore a red knit cap and did not use the phrase underlying conditions. She climbed onto Bellwether's roof, took photographs, and returned with tar on one knee. "The membrane over the back room is failing," she said. "Flashing's bad around the vent, and whoever patched the front corner used something meant for boats." Frank, Ruth, and Lena said together. Gloria showed them the photographs on her phone. "A full replacement with the damaged decking would be $16,800. I can stop the active leaks and redo the flashing for $3,900, but that buys time, not a new roof." "How much time?" Lena asked. "If winter behaves, 2 years. If it doesn't, ask winter." Lena approved the repair before Ruth could offer anything. "I have $3,900, she said later, when Gloria had gone. "I'm not destitute. I didn't say you were. You thought about helping. I think about many things I don't do. That must be exhausting." The leak repair used most of Lena's ready savings. She said it without self-pity while updating the old ledger, but her blue pen pressed hard enough to emboss the next 3 pages. Ruth wrote the price of a used cooler on her own pad. $3,200, delivered but not installed. A plumber quoted $600 to correct the upstairs toilet and repair the downstairs sink. Ruth read his estimate twice. "Frank would haunt us if we paid that," she said. "Frank can fix it for free," Lena replied. Ruth hired the plumber. The apartment inspection happened on a Tuesday morning. Ruth asked Paige to come because Paige understood buildings, clearances, and the difference between a cosmetic flaw and a liability. Paige arrived with a level, flashlight, tape measure, and no company logo. "Do I have permission to open cabinets?" she asked. "Yes." "Closets?" "Yes." "Move boxes?" Ask Lena. Lena stood at the top of the stairs. "Anything marked taxes stays closed." "How many years?" "All of them." "That isn't a number. It is in my house." Paige found 2 outlets that needed replacing. No smoke detector in the bedroom, a loose stair rail, and a water stain behind the short refrigerator that proved to be old. She tested every window and measured the narrow landing. "The 8th step needs a shim," she said. "I said it tilted," Lena told Ruth. "You said many things. I'm usually right by accumulation." Paige climbed the stairs again, while Ruth watched from below. "The rail is the bigger problem. It stops 3 steps early." "So did Aunt June," Lena said. "She got tired of installing it. We need to extend it." Lena crossed her arms. "Need? If Ruth lives here." Ruth waited. Lena looked at the unfinished rail. "Fine." Paige wrote on a strip of blue painter's tape and stuck it to the wall. "Extend rail," asked Lena. She said yes. Lena read it. "Take that down. You said no moving or improving without approval. I'm documenting approval. This is why your company owns labels." Paige smiled, then seemed to remember she was not supposed to be comfortable. In the apartment kitchen, Ruth opened the short refrigerator. Empty except for a jar of mustard and 2 film canisters. "What's in those?" she asked. "Seeds," Lena said. From when? When people used film. Paige took photographs of the electrical panel. Ruth noticed the care with which she framed only the panel, not Lena's tax boxes or laundry. Did the regional center call? Ruth asked. Paige lowered the phone. No, that means no shirt. It means they haven't called. They told you Monday they would finish checking by Friday. Paige put the phone away. The clothing was baled with other textiles. Some went to resale partners, some went to recycling. Ruth looked through the front windows. From upstairs, she could see the roofs of parked cars, the faded bakery sign, and a wedge of courthouse lawn at the end of the block. So it's gone? Yes. Paige's voice had no professional padding left in it. I am sorry, she said. I don't have a better sentence. Ruth rested one hand on the windowsill. Dust marked her fingertips. No, she said. There isn't one. Paige nodded. She returned to the stair rail and measured it again. Before leaving, she gave Ruth an estimate for the repairs and offered to have Nathan do the work. Has he agreed? Ruth asked. I haven't asked. Then don't volunteer him. I thought, I know. Paige drew a line through Nathan's name. I can hire someone. Give me the estimate. I'll decide with Lena. Outside, Paige paused beside Ruth's car. Nathan thinks I chose your side. Did you? I told him the house isn't ours. That's not my side. That's the street address. He says I made promises based on what you told us. You did. I also told him you never agreed to a price. What do you want me to do with that? Paige rubbed her hands together against the cold. Nothing. That doesn't sound like you. I'm trying it. Ruth almost touched her arm. She put her hand in her coat pocket instead. I won't speak to Nathan for you, she said. I know. Paige walked to her SUV. The shop received 5 inquiries before it received a license. Dorothy told 2 people at the library. Celeste called about a retired teacher whose husband wanted to use branches from the pear tree they had planted together. Frances wanted to organize a winter centerpiece workshop and insisted 20 women would pay in advance if Lena promised not to insult their work until the end. Impossible condition, Lena said. They turned down the funeral arrangement because they could not accept money legally and because Ruth refused to convert every sad telephone call into unpaid labor. That refusal impressed Lena more than any flower Ruth made. You said no without offering soup, she observed. I can learn. You looked ill afterward. I'll build tolerance. They applied for the license, obtained insurance quotes, and wrote rules on the back of an old wedding order form. No more than 3 commissions in a week, no same-day work, no walk-in stock. 1 workshop a month, 12 participants maximum, no deliveries farther than 15 miles. Lena added, no balloons in capital letters. Ruth added, no mayonnaise, then crossed it out when Lena threatened to cancel the partnership before it existed. They calculated what 3 commissions and 1 workshop might earn after flowers, supplies, taxes, utilities, and insurance. The result would not replace anyone's income. It might cover the building, Ruth said. Some months. I have Social Security and Frank's small survivor pension. I have Social Security and a mortgage that thinks it's younger than I am. I am not giving the shop my retirement. I wouldn't take it. I might invest in the roof and cooler after the house sells, but only if we make a written agreement about ownership and repayment. Lena's face closed. A written agreement protects you too, Ruth said. From what? From me changing my mind. Lena looked at the old calendar, still hanging open to March. You came back for a funeral, she said. And Dorothy. That isn't a history. No. What happens when Nathan apologizes? I hope he does. You know what I mean. Ruth folded the rules. If he apologizes, he becomes my son, who apologized. He does not become my landlord. Lena leaned against the dead cooler. What if the shop fails again? Then we close it again. With better records. That answer was not romantic enough to frighten either of them. On the 30th day, Ruth woke before dawn in Frank's bed. She had spent the month restoring only what she wanted. 2-bedroom chairs came back from Carver's. The walnut entry table returned to the hall. Frank's plumbing books went to Nathan after Ruth chose 3 with notes in the margins. The sofa remained in storage. She sold the bread machine to Lena for $1, and Lena used it to hold the back door open. The dining room stayed empty. Ruth made coffee and carried it through the rooms. She stood at the front window and looked at the white roses cut back for winter. Frank had planted them too close to the fence. Every year Ruth told him they needed more sun. Every year they bloomed anyway, making both of them insufferable. She expected leaving to feel like letting Paige win. Instead, staying felt like arranging herself against someone else's accusation. At 9, she called Monica. "I want a list," she said. "Do you have a target date? After I move what I'm keeping. No staging crew, understood. No flooring, I agree. And my son can make an offer if he qualifies like anyone else. Do you want me to tell him that?" "No, I will." Nathan did not answer, so Ruth drove to his job site. He came outside in a dust mask and work gloves, irritation arriving before she spoke. "I'm listing the house." He pulled down the mask. "You drove over here to tell me that? I didn't want you to hear from Monica. So, I should be grateful?" "No." A compressor started inside the house behind him. "I can't pay $325, he said. "You may offer what you can pay, and watch strangers outbid me." "Yes." Nathan looked across the gravel driveway. Dad built half that house. He repaired half of it. The original builders remain responsible for most walls. You know what I mean. "Yes." He stripped off his gloves. "You're really moving above that shop. I signed a 6-month lease this morning." His eyes came back to her. 6 months. With an option to continue. "You already signed. You already measured." The answer hurt him. Ruth saw it and wished it did not need to. "Paige says Lena isn't using you," he said. Paige inspected the apartment. "I know." Ruth waited. Nathan kicked a piece of broken drywall away from his boot. "You two talk now." "Sometimes." "She doesn't talk to me." "Have you called? She lives in my house." Then the distance is impressive. He gave her a look almost worthy of Frank. "I want you to come Sunday," Ruth said. "Help me move. You have Paige's crew." "I didn't ask Paige's crew." "Why me?" "Because I want my son there." His face shifted, but he did not answer. Sunday morning, Nathan arrived with his truck. Paige came separately, carrying the extended stair rail she had ordered only after Lena approved the price. They moved Ruth's brass bed, 2 lamps, her mother's cedar chest, 4 boxes of books, the everyday dishes, and the yellow recipe tin into the apartment. Ruth left Frank's recliner in the house for the listing photographs. She could not yet decide whether it belonged with her or with the room that held his shape. Nathan complained about the 8th stair. Paige installed the new rail. Lena supervised from below and rejected the first placement by half an inch. By late afternoon, the apartment looked neither full nor temporary. Ruth set Lena's handwritten flower card upright on the kitchen windowsill. Empty space is part of the arrangement. After everyone left, she sat on the brass bed and listened to the building. The furnace knocked below. Pipes ticked inside the wall. A car door slammed on the street, followed by laughter that faded toward the courthouse. Then came 3 firm knocks from downstairs. Ruth descended using the new rail. Nathan stood outside the florist door, holding Frank's recliner lever in one hand. "It came off when Monica's photographer moved the chair," he said. Ruth unlocked the door. Nathan did not come in. "I can fix it," he said. "I know." He looked past her into the dark shop. "Do you want me to?" Ruth stepped aside. "Yes," she said. "I do." Nathan carried the lever to the work table and laid it beside Dorothy's discarded hydrangea stems. "It's not broken," he said. "The cotter pin came out." "Then why bring it here?" "I need a new pin. There are hardware stores." He looked at the pegboard. Dad kept parts. Frank kept bent nails and called them inventory. Nathan opened 3 drawers before finding a tobacco tin filled with washers, screws, pins, and objects no one had manufactured since the 70s. He spread them on the table. Ruth stood across from him in her slippers and cardigan. "You could have fixed it at the house," she said. "I didn't know if I was allowed in." The statement was partly sarcastic. It was also true. "You're allowed in when I invite you. You weren't there. I live here now." Nathan selected a pin, tested it through the hole in the lever assembly, and chose another. Monica said, "There's a showing tomorrow." "Yes." "Already?" "The photographs went up this morning." She said the dining room looked big. "It is big without a table." He kept his eyes on the lever. "Any word from the people who bought it?" "No." "Paige calls carvers every Friday." "I know. She doesn't tell you because she thinks it sounds like she wants credit, does she?" "Probably." Ruth pulled out a stool and sat. "How are you two?" "Fine." "Then I won't ask again." Nathan gave the pin a sharper push than necessary. "She thinks I let her take all the blame." "Did you?" "She owns the company." "You were in the garage." "I know where I was." He set down the lever. "I wanted Dad's workbench." Ruth waited. "In the new garage. I thought I'd take down the old one and rebuild it there. Same top, same drawers. Paige drew the apartment around it. The workbench wasn't for my apartment. No. So the plan wasn't only about taking care of me. I never said it was. You said exactly that. Nathan sat on the second stool. I thought if we bought the house, I'd have the bench, you'd be close, and we'd stop worrying every time you didn't answer your phone. I didn't answer because your father was dying. Being above your garage would not have made me more conversational. I know that now. Do you? He picked at dried glue on the edge of the work table. Paige says I use her to do things I don't want to admit I want. That sounds expensive for her. She also says you taught me to expect people to make things easy. Ruth looked toward the dark front windows. Nathan continued before she could answer. I told her that wasn't fair. It isn't entirely unfair. His eyes lifted. I made things easy because I was good at it, Ruth said, and because people thanked me. Sometimes. You want me to apologize for letting you help us? I want you to recognize when help becomes the price of belonging. That sounds like Lena. It sounds like me in Lena's building. Nathan looked around the workroom. Are you happy here? Ruth considered the upstairs toilet, the leaning stair, the furnace that knocked like a visitor with bad news. I know what I decided today, she said. That's close. Nathan fitted the new pin into the lever. I'll put this back tomorrow, he said. After the showing. I'll ask. Yes. He left through the front door. Ruth watched him reach his truck, stop, and look up at the apartment windows before driving away. The business license arrived in an envelope Lena nearly threw into the ASK Lena pile. She read it twice and taped it behind the counter. That does not mean we're open, she said. The insurance policy began on the 1st of the month. Ruth paid the initial premium from her checking account and recorded it as a loan to Bellwether. Lena signed the entry in the ledger. The formality made both of them irritable. Celeste sent them the family with the pear branches. The widower, Marcus Lee, arrived in a canvas jacket carrying branches tied with orange extension cord. He was a retired college custodian and apologized for the leaves dropping across the floor. My wife planted it 28 years ago, he said. Tree never gave us a decent pear. What did she like about it? Ruth asked. She liked proving me wrong. Every spring she said this would be the year. Lena examined the branches. Was it? No. Good. Consistency matters. They made an arrangement with the crooked pear branches rising over cream roses and dark green salal. Marcus brought his wife's red gardening gloves, and Ruth tucked them near the base without hiding them. When he returned, he stood in front of the work table for so long, Ruth feared they had misunderstood. You made the branches crooked, he said. They were crooked. The other florist wanted to wire them straight. Then they wouldn't be your tree. Marcus paid the invoice and added a tip. Lena recorded every dollar. After flowers, supplies, sales tax, and insurance allocation, their first commission produced $78.40. We're rich, Lena said. We need a delivery fee. We didn't deliver. For the future. You always invoice the future. The workshop produced more noise and less profit. Francis promised 12 people and arrived with 14. One woman brought wine in a tote bag despite the shop's lack of a liquor policy. Another had allergies to cedar, eucalyptus, pine, and anything dusty, which excluded the building itself. Paige registered under her own name and paid in advance. Ruth saw her at the end of the counter wearing an old green sweater and holding floral wire, as if it might accuse her of something. You came, Ruth said. Francis cornered me at the grocery store. You could have lied. She knows my car. Lena clapped her hands. If everyone intends to chat through the instructions, I'll start charging by the minute. They made winter centerpieces in low tin trays. Ruth demonstrated how to establish the line before filling the center. Lena moved between tables, correcting mechanics and insulting excessive ribbon. Paige worked carefully. Her arrangement was symmetrical, restrained, and almost completely without personality. You can loosen it, Ruth said. I like it neat. You can like it neat. You sounded disappointed. I sounded like Lena. It's contagious. Across the room, Francis used enough red ribbon to restrain furniture during a hurricane. Paige adjusted one cedar branch a quarter inch. Nathan says the house has 3 offers. 2. 1 withdrew. Are you accepting? Monica is reviewing them tomorrow. Paige twisted wire around a pine cone. We can't make one. I know. He won't say that to you. He already did. No. He said he can't afford market. He hasn't said we decided not to try. Ruth looked at her. Paige kept her attention on the pine cone. We ran the numbers. Even if you accepted 240, the renovation and apartment would leave us with no reserve. I should have run them before I paid for drawings. Yes, I wanted the plan. Why? Because it solved everything. For whom? Paige's hands stopped. My mother still lives in the house with my father's cup, she said. It's been 13 years. She calls me when a pipe leaks and refuses to let a plumber move his old towels from under the sink. I thought if I made your move clean, you wouldn't become trapped there. I'm not your mother. I know that now. You knew it then, not where it mattered. Frances called for help with her ribbon. Ruth started toward her. Ruth, Paige said. Ruth turned. I am sorry I took Frank's shirt. The workshop noise continued around them, shears closing, women laughing, Lena telling someone that glitter was not a botanical material. I know, Ruth said. It did not absolve Paige. It did not reject her either. By the end of the workshop, cedar covered the floor, and one warming tray had been repurposed to hold wet floral foam. The 14 participants left happy, carrying centerpieces that range from elegant to structurally concerning. The shop earned $560. Supplies, insurance, heat, refreshments, and Frances's accidental extra participants reduced the net to $183. Ruth sat at the work table afterward with her shoes off. My back hurts, she said. My hands hurt, Lena replied. Paige swept the floor. You are not supposed to work, Ruth told her. I paid to cut cedar. Sweeping is how I get it off my shoes. Lena flexed her swollen fingers. One workshop a month. We agreed on one, Ruth said. I'm confirming the wisdom of the rule. We also need stools at every station, and sharper student shears, and no glitter. That rule was implied by civilization. Paige leaned on the broom. Your front traffic path is too narrow when everyone has coats. Lena opened her mouth. She's right, Ruth said. I know she's right. I dislike the speed with which correctness settles on her. Paige moved 2 empty display racks only after Lena nodded. Monica called while they were cleaning. The strongest offer was $322,000 with a standard inspection and no demand that Ruth replace the flooring. The buyer was an accountant relocating from Ohio with her adult sister. They liked the large dining room and the backyard roses. Ruth asked for an hour. She went upstairs, washed cedar dust from her hands, and sat beside the kitchen window. From there, she could see the lit front room below and Paige's shadow moving across the glass. $322,000. After commissions, closing costs, and the small expenses of moving, enough would remain to keep Ruth secure if she did not confuse security with spending. Frank would have made a spreadsheet with too many tabs. Ruth made 4 columns on notebook paper. Living expenses, emergency reserve, shop investment, do not touch. She put more under do not touch than the other 3 combined. Then she called Monica and accepted. Nathan did not answer Ruth's first call. He answered the second. We accepted an offer, she said. He was quiet. The inspection is next week, closing in 45 days if nothing changes. Who bought it? A woman and her sister. What are they paying? $322. Another silence. You did well, he said finally. The words sounded as if he had cut them from something inside himself. I'm sorry, Ruth said. You got what you wanted. I'm sorry you're losing it. I already lost it. Ruth looked down through the window. Paige had stopped sweeping. She could not hear Nathan's words, but she was watching Ruth's face. You're right, Ruth said. So did I. Nathan hung up. Lena climbed the stairs slowly and entered without knocking. Is it done? Under contract. Lena sat across from Ruth. You look terrible. Thank you. You could still buy a condo. I could. You could put every dollar in safe investments and come downstairs only when you want coffee. I could do that too. Lena noticed the notebook. What's do not touch? Most of the money. Good. I can fund half the roof replacement and the used cooler as an investment after closing, not a gift. You fund what you can, the shop repays us from profits, and we put ownership terms in writing. Lena stared out the window. I don't want to owe you, she said. You already owe me half a roast beef sandwich. I mean money. Then we write terms you can live with. And if there are no profits, we decide together whether to continue. No one loses a house. Lena's hands rested in her lap, the knuckles swollen and pink. I can put in $8,000, she said. After Gloria's repair, no more. Then no more. The building stays mine. Yes. The business can be shared. Yes. Limited hours, 3 days, 2.5, Thursday afternoon through Saturday. No weddings over 75 people. No weddings at all for the first year. Lena looked almost relieved. Good. Below them, Paige turned off the workroom light and called up the stairs. "May I lock the front?" Lena called back. "Yes." A moment later, the deadbolt slid into place. Ruth looked at the columns on her paper. The house was not sold yet. The roof was not replaced. The cooler remained dead, and Bellwether's first two events had earned less than a modest week of Frank's survivor pension. Still, when Paige left and the building settled around them, the sound did not feel empty. It sounded occupied. Occupied did not mean easy. Gloria removed the patched section of roof and found 3 sheets of decking soft enough to push a screwdriver through. The additional lumber and labor added $2,400 to the estimate. Lena stood in the alley looking up at the exposed boards. Underlying conditions? She took photographs, Ruth said. They all take photographs now. It makes bad news look official. The used cooler arrived the same afternoon and proved 1.5 inches wider than the back doorway. The delivery men left it beneath a tarp in the alley after Lena refused to let them remove the door frame with a reciprocating saw. "The trim is original," she said. "The cooler is outside," Ruth replied. "It is temporarily outside. Flowers prefer indoors. Flowers prefer fields. We're already compromising them." Nathan came after work, measured the doorway, and said the trim could be removed without damage if everyone stopped talking while he did it. Lena continued talking. He removed the trim anyway, brought the cooler through, then replaced every piece. When Ruth asked what she owed him, he said nothing. "How much?" she repeated. "Mom, if the shop called another contractor, we would pay him." "I'm not another contractor. You are when you work here." Nathan looked at Lena for support. "She invoices friendship," Lena said. "You won't win." He charged them 2 hours at half his usual rate. Ruth paid the invoice. Nathan complained while depositing the check. The house inspection produced its own list. The furnace had years left, but no enthusiasm. 2 outlets lacked proper protection. The porch board Frank had intended to replace had finally split, and moisture showed around the downstairs toilet. The buyers asked for $8,000 in credits. Monica negotiated it to $5,500. "It's still a strong offer," she told Ruth. "I know. You can refuse. I know that too." Ruth approved the credit. A house did not become perfect because the seller had loved somebody inside it. Nathan replaced the porch board before closing. This time, he wrote an invoice without being asked. Ruth sat on the front step while he worked. White paint flakes collected on his drop cloth. He measured the opening twice, cut the new board, and discovered it was 1/8 of an inch too long. Frank would have cut it short, Ruth said. He'd say the house moved. He blamed humidity. He blamed humidity for the bathroom door, the kitchen drawers, and his left knee. Nathan carried the board back to his saw. Ruth watched the empty street. The for sale sign had acquired a red under contract strip. Evelyn Hart had crossed over twice that week to ask whether Ruth needed help and wants to find out the final price. Paige changed her company forms, Nathan said over the saw. Ruth waited until the noise stopped. "What forms?" "She requires separate signatures for storage, resale, donation, and disposal. Living clients get a 24-hour hold before anything leaves. That sounds sensible. It costs her money. Most careful things do. She lost a large job because the client said another company could finish in 1 day." Ruth looked toward the house. "Does she blame me?" "No." Nathan aligned the board. "She blames herself. Then she gets angry because I let her." "Did you?" "Yes." The answer came without softening. Nathan knelt and drove the first screw. "I wanted the house. She wanted a clean plan. You were exhausted, and Dad wasn't going to tell us no. He was still alive." "I know." Ruth folded her hands over one knee. "I should have stopped the truck," he said. "Yes. I'm sorry." The drill turned. The screw head sank into the new board. Ruth could not tell whether he expected forgiveness to arrive in a sentence. She hoped not. "I believe you," she said. He looked at her. "That isn't the same as being finished." "I know." He drove the remaining screws. On closing morning, Ruth walked through the house alone. The buyers had allowed her to leave Frank's recliner until the last day. Everything else she kept had been moved upstairs at Bellwether or placed in a smaller storage unit under Ruth's name. The yellow recipe tin waited in the car. Ruth crossed the empty dining room. The pale rectangle left by the missing table had faded after weeks of sunlight. She could no longer see its exact edges. In the bedroom, she opened Frank's closet Paige had returned Ruth's clothes, but nothing to Frank's side except the red flannel shirt, which Ruth had already taken to the apartment. Wire hangers no longer tapped there. Ruth had removed them herself. She checked the bathroom faucet, the kitchen stove, and the back door out of habit. Then she went to the yard. The roses stood bare along the south fence. One branch rubbed against another in the wind. Ruth cut it back with Frank's cheap shears. Nathan arrived for the recliner. He and Pete planned to put it in the office at Nathan's workshop, where men could sit in it with dirty clothes and improve its appearance. "You're sure?" Nathan asked. "I'm sure. You might want it later." "I might. That doesn't mean I keep everything." Together they carried it to his truck. The lever held. Ruth locked the front door and gave the keys to Monica at the title office. She signed documents, listened to explanations, and declined a commemorative photograph beside the buyers. The proceeds appeared in her account that afternoon, reduced by commissions, credits, taxes, and fees. It was a substantial amount of money. It was also the converted value of walls, labor, Sunday dinners, a paid-off mortgage, and 43 years of not moving. Ruth transferred most of it into an account marked Reserve. She funded the agreed shop investment and nothing more. Bellwether's new roof was finished before the first snow. The cooler hummed loudly but held temperature. The business agreement left the building solely Lena's, divided Bellwether's operating ownership equally, and recorded Ruth's and Lena's contributions as loans repayable only from available profits. The accountant who reviewed it asked what would happen if one partner wanted out. "We speak before she disappears," Lena said. The accountant looked at Ruth. "It's a business term," Ruth said. "It is not," the accountant replied, "but I'll note a 60-day exit provision." Their limited reopening began without a ribbon or announcement. Lena turned the sign to "Open Thursday through Saturday" and waited for the town to notice. The town noticed on Thursday morning. 3 people entered before Ruth finished her coffee. One wanted a birthday bouquet delivered 27 miles away. One wanted balloons. One wanted to know whether they still sold silk cemetery cones. They turned down all 3. At noon, Celeste called with a funeral commission involving a mechanic's red shop rags and yellow mums. At 1, Dorothy brought back the moss-colored bowl and stayed to wash buckets. At 2, Frances appeared with a list of 26 people interested in the next workshop. 12, Lena said. 14 worked last time, Frances replied. 14 damaged my faith in exits. Ruth reduced the list to 2 workshops of 12. Lena accused her of encouraging Frances. Ruth accused Lena of enjoying the argument. The first month ended with enough revenue to cover utilities, insurance, supplies, and one modest payment toward the partner loans. It did not cover wages. Ruth stood too long, accepted 1 extra commission, and spent an entire Sunday with ice against her lower back. Lena's right hand swelled after wiring pine garland and remained too stiff to close around shears for 3 days. They changed the rules. 2 commissions a week during workshop weeks. No garland longer than 6 feet. Stools at every workstation. Dorothy handled deliveries for a fee when the destination was on her way to somewhere she claimed she was already going. Ruth caught herself offering free work to a widower who said he could not afford the arrangement he wanted. Lena waited until the man left with a smaller arrangement at a lower price. "You were about to pay for his flowers," she said. "He lost his wife. So did Dorothy." She brought lunch. He looked embarrassed. Then give him dignity. Charge him for what he can buy. Ruth rinsed the shears. "You make kindness sound strict, otherwise it turns into unpaid invoices and resentment. You've been saving that one. 23 years. Ruth put the shears away. "I'm sorry I left you." Lena's hand stopped over the ledger. "I've said I had reasons," Ruth continued. "I've said Frank's mother needed me. I've said Nathan needed help. All of that was true. Yes. I also liked being the person nobody could manage without." Lena looked toward the old work table. "I could have come 1 afternoon a week," Ruth said. "I could have called without explaining why I hadn't called. I could have done something besides wait until I had enough time to be useful. You sent soup. I sent soup. It was good soup. That made it worse." Lena closed the ledger. A little. The apology did not restore the lost years. It made them less necessary to defend. On a Saturday near closing, Paige appeared at the front door, wearing her company sweatshirt and a nervous expression. Ruth let her in. "Carver's called," Paige said. "The table?" The buyers finally returned the message. Ruth's heart moved painfully against her ribs. What did they say? They don't want to sell it. All right, they bought it for their dining room. It fits the space. They like it. Ruth looked past Paige toward the street. I offered more than they paid, Paige said. They said no. You tried. I found another table. Ruth turned back. Similar size. Also maple. I sent them pictures. They're willing to trade if they see it in person. You bought another table? With my money. How much? It doesn't matter. That is what Nathan says when money matters. Paige's mouth tightened. $1,200. You paid $1,200 to replace a table they bought for $825. I paid $1,200 for a table they might like better. And if they don't? I own a table. Ruth leaned against the counter. Why are you doing this? Because I took yours. It won't bring back Frank's shirt. I know. It won't put me back in the house. I know. It won't make what you did an accident. Paige's eyes reddened. I know that too. Lena moved quietly into the workroom, leaving the front to them. Paige held out her phone. On the screen was a photograph of a rectangular maple table with turned legs and a glossy finish. They agreed to meet tomorrow, she said. 2 counties over. I want you to come. No. Paige lowered the phone. You chose the replacement, Ruth said. You made the offer. Finish the decision you made. I thought you'd want to see them. I don't need strangers to explain why they bought a table that was offered for sale. What if they say no? Then they say no. Paige put the phone away. All right. She turned toward the door. Paige. She stopped. Ask them. Don't pressure them. A tired, humorless smile crossed Paige's face. I have new forms. The next afternoon passed without a call. Ruth worked on an arrangement of white mums and red shop rags while Lena entered invoices. Every truck slowing outside made Ruth look toward the window. At 4:20, the front bell clunked. Nathan came in backward, holding one end of the maple dining table. Paige held the other. Where? Nathan asked through his teeth. Ruth stood motionless. The table bore a fresh gouge near one corner and a water ring she did not recognize. Frank's shallow burn mark remained beneath the place where he always sat. Lena came from the back room. Well, she said, it won't fit through that door with the legs on. Paige closed her eyes. Nathan set his end down. Of course it won't. Ruth placed one hand on the scarred maple. It was not restored. It was returned. Turn it over, she said. We'll take it apart. Nathan rolled the table onto its side, while Paige held the far edge. Lena found a socket wrench in the drawer beneath the old work table and handed it to him. This one fits, she said. Nathan tried it. It doesn't. It fit the cooler. The cooler has different bolts. A bolt is a bolt. Ruth looked at him. Do not explain bolts to her. We'll be here until spring. The table legs had not been removed since Frank and Ruth carried it into their first apartment. 2 nuts turned easily. The 3rd resisted. The 4th had been replaced with something Frank found in the garage and believed was close enough. Nathan studied it. Dad did this. How can you tell? Paige asked. It's wrong in a confident way. He fetched tools from his truck. They removed the legs, carried the tabletop through the front door, and set it across sawhorses in the workroom. It crowded Aunt June's old table so badly Lena had to turn sideways to reach the sink. This cannot stay here, she said. It has been here 9 minutes, Ruth replied. 8 minutes too long. Paige rubbed the gouge with her thumb. This happened in my truck. The water ring didn't, Nathan said. Thank you, Inspector. I'm saying you don't have to fix every mark. Paige faced him. I know what I have to fix. No, you know what you want to fix. The sentence stopped them both. Ruth saw their whole trouble in the silence that followed. Nathan had hidden inside Paige's certainty until it frightened him. Paige had turned decisiveness into proof that she cared until any resistance felt like rejection. Ruth pulled out a stool. How did you get it back? She asked. Paige sat on the other one. The couple liked the replacement. It's newer, and the finish matches their chairs. How much more did you pay? They agreed to an even trade. That isn't what I asked. Delivery, fuel, and the difference between what they paid and what I paid came to $680. Nathan leaned against the sink. She wouldn't let me pay half. Because your mother didn't clear the house. I stood in the garage. That doesn't make the table half your fault. It makes the whole day partly my fault. Paige looked at him. You told me to handle it. You didn't have to handle it like a foreclosure. Ruth said. Stop. Neither did. Nathan's voice rose. You keep talking like you made one bad call. We had a plan. I wanted the plan too. I know that. Then quit protecting me. I'm not protecting you. I'm apologizing for what I did. And what did I do? Paige's face crumpled with anger. You let me become the woman who took your mother's life apart while you labeled tools. The room went still. Nathan looked down at his hands. Ruth rested her palm on the tabletop. Frank's burn mark sat near the old head of the table, a dark half moon beneath the finish. He had set down a hot pan after telling Ruth he did not need a trivet. For 30 years, he claimed the mark had already been there. We are not dividing blame like furniture, Ruth said. There is enough for both of you. Paige wiped beneath one eye with the heel of her hand. I'm sorry. You've said that. I said I was sorry about the shirt. I said I thought I was helping. Paige looked directly at her. I cleared the house because I wanted the plan to keep moving. I knew you hadn't said yes the way a client says yes. I told myself you were too overwhelmed to decide, and I was better at deciding. Ruth's fingers traced the table edge. I treated you like the next empty room, Paige said. I am sorry. The apology asked for nothing. That made it heavier. Nathan pulled out the last stool. I knew she was starting. I didn't know everything would go that day, but I knew enough to stop it. Ruth nodded. I'm sorry, he said. Not because the house sold, before that. All right. Nathan's face tightened. All right. It means I heard you. What happens now? Ruth looked at the table, the crowded workroom, and the two adults who had imagined apology as a door someone else opened. Now we decide what to do with this. The gouge was too deep to disappear without taking down the entire finish. Paige wanted to strip the tabletop. Nathan wanted to fill the damaged area and leave everything else alone. Lena ran her fingers over Frank's burn mark. You strip it, you lose this, she said. I can work around it, Paige replied. You cleared a house in one day. I don't trust you around sandpaper. That ended the discussion for the afternoon. The table remained on sawhorses for 3 weeks. Ruth and Paige worked on it Saturday mornings before the shop opened. Ruth would not let Paige rent a power sander. They used sanding blocks, moved slowly, and stopped whenever the old finish began warming beneath their hands. Paige was terrible at moving slowly. You're pressing, Ruth said. I'm sanding. You're punishing the wood. It's maple. It still knows. Paige loosened her grip. They cleaned the water ring, softened the gouge, and removed scratches that caught on cloth. They left the burn mark and a shallow line Nathan made with a fork at a Sunday dinner when he was 37 and should have known better. On the third Saturday, Paige brought Frank's blue rubber-tipped spare key. Ruth recognized it immediately. You already returned that. I had another copy in the company lockbox. Ruth looked at the key in Paige's palm. I should have given it back sooner. Yes. Paige set it on the tabletop. I changed our procedures, she said. At Clear Path, Nathan told me. Marcy reviews consent forms before anything moves. I review them after her. Living clients get the hold period unless there's a safety issue. Has it helped? It has made us slower. That wasn't my question. Paige brushed sanding dust into her palm. Yes. A man changed his mind about donating his wife's sewing machine. Before, I would have convinced him it was too heavy and nobody used it. This time, we moved it into his spare room. Does he sew? I don't know. Then perhaps he has time to decide. Paige nodded. My mother finally washed my father's cup, she said. Ruth waited. I went over and asked whether she wanted coffee. She said yes. I picked up the cup and asked if I could wash it. What did she say? She said, It's about time. Ruth laughed. I spent 13 years thinking I was protecting her from that cup, Paige said. She thought I didn't want to touch it. People are inconveniently separate. You knew that? I'm learning. When the table was finished, Nathan and Pete carried it into the front room. Ruth placed it beneath the painted leaf border, parallel to the windows. It became the workshop table, wide enough for 12 people if everyone shared elbow room. Aunt June's scarred work table stayed in the back for commissions. Lena walked around Ruth's dining table twice. It's too nice for floral foam, she said. Frank put hot pans on it. Frank had no standards, neither do wet hydrangeas. They covered the center with a washable canvas runner and left the edges exposed. Ruth did not buy chairs to match. She collected sturdy wooden ones from resale shops, church basements, and Dorothy's garage, paying for each. Nothing matched except the height. The first time 12 adults sat around the table making remembrance wreaths, Ruth had to step into the back room. Lena followed. You're crying, she said. I'm aware. Do you want them to leave? No. Do you want soup? Ruth laughed into a paper towel. You are cruel. I learned from an expert. Bellwether found a rhythm that did not resemble success in a magazine. Some weeks they filled all their commission slots. Other weeks they made one arrangement and argued over the heating bill. The smaller cooler broke a fan belt in February. Gloria's roof held through an ice storm, though the gutter over the alley detached and frightened Dorothy during a delivery. Ruth's back still hurt if she ignored the stools. Lena's hands forced her to give up delicate wiring, so she taught others to do it, and criticized their technique from a chair. They made enough to cover operations and pay themselves small amounts by spring. No partner loan vanished. No waiting list stretched around the block. Ruth did not need either to feel the shop was alive. She kept most of the house proceeds untouched. Nathan and Paige stayed in their modest home. The lost deposits remained lost. They abandoned the garage addition, and Nathan converted one wall of his existing workshop to hold Frank's tools. The old workbench stayed with the house because it had been fastened to the garage wall and included in the sale. Nathan complained once, then built his own. He and Paige began arriving separately less often. Sunday meals returned slowly. The first took place upstairs because Ruth did not want food on the newly finished table. 4 people crowded around the apartment's tiny kitchen table while the stove warmed Lena's left knee. Paige asked before opening a cabinet for salt. By the third Sunday, they ate downstairs after closing. Paige never received a key. She knocked, even when she could see Ruth through the window. Ruth always let her in. Frances turned Frank's red flannel shirt into an apron. She used the shirt's back for the front panel and made the split cuff into a pocket. Ruth had resisted cutting it until she realized the shirt had spent months draped over a chair because she was afraid to make it useful. On the morning of the first anniversary of Frank's burial, she tied the apron around her waist. Bellwether was hosting a remembrance workshop that afternoon. Dorothy brought rosemary. Celeste supplied small blank cards for names and private messages. Paige arrived with coffee and waited outside until Ruth unlocked the door. Nathan carried in a box of cedar. Lena sat behind the counter, reading the invoice for white roses. These cost more than last year. So does everything, Ruth said. Grief should have bulk pricing. The front room filled gradually. Adults came carrying photographs, gloves, recipes, scraps of fabric, and cuttings from sleeping gardens. Ruth showed them how to anchor what mattered without hiding it. Nathan stayed after the others left. He helped gather wire ends from the floor, while Paige and Lena took empty cups upstairs. Evening light reached across the work table and touched Frank's burn mark. Nathan rested both hands on the maple edge. Do you ever regret selling the house? Sometimes. He nodded, apparently relieved by the answer. Do you regret moving here? Sometimes. That's less comforting. It should be. I'm not responsible for making my decisions comfortable for you. He looked toward the front window. The gold letters had been repainted, but their old shape remained. You chose a dead store over us, he said quietly. Ruth heard the hurt beneath the accusation. A year earlier, she might have answered the hurt and swallowed the accusation. No, she said. I chose a place where nothing was taken before I said goodbye. Nathan looked down at the table. I didn't choose it instead of you, Ruth continued. I chose it without asking you to choose it for me. He rubbed his thumb over Frank's burn mark. Can I still come Sunday? Yes. Upstairs or down? Down. You can bring food. Paige will bring food. You can learn. He smiled. At the door, he hugged her without bending as if she might break. Then he left, calling up the stairs that Paige was ready. Ruth turned off the cooler and checked the back sink. Lena had left the old red cardigan over her stool. The yellow recipe tin sat on a shelf beside the ledger, no longer hidden or packed. On the work table, one participant had left an unfinished arrangement. Cedar circled a photograph too tightly, filling every gap. Ruth loosened 2 branches. She moved the photograph toward the light and removed a white rose that did not belong. Then she stopped. The open space was part of it,